Good morning, everybody. Good morning. It's June 5th, 2025. Of course my microphone's on. I know you can hear me. If you could settle down, we'll go ahead and get started. It's June 5th, 2025. We're going to call the business meeting of the Governing Board of the South Florida Water Management District to order. First on the agenda will be the Pledge of Allegiance. Colonel Roman, would you like to lead us in the pledge? If you could all stand and face the flag. Thanks.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning, everybody. It's great to see you here. Mr. Martinez is not going to be able to join us today, and Vice Chair Wagner is participating remotely. Vice Chair, are you on?
I'm here.
Great. Good morning. Board members, I'm going to ask that you make sure your microphone is on and you speak into the microphone so online attendees can hear you, and members of the public on Zoom who wish to address the board may use the raise your hand feature. If members of the public are having any trouble and need help, please go to our website, sfwmd.gov, and click the Ask Us button at the top of the page, and staff will help you out. If you're using a phone and you'd like to comment, please press *9 to raise your hand, *6 to mute and to unmute. And as a courtesy to others who wish to speak, members of the public are asked to comment only once on each topic. We're going to take public comment first from those who are here in person and submitted a comment card, followed by those who raised their hand on Zoom. Switching gears, this time of year usually marks the start of wet season, and from where I live, it definitely has marked the start of wet season. So it's a good time to remember that the ability to live, work, and raise families in South Florida depends on the district's water management system and the incredible work that our water managers and those in the field who operate and maintain our flood control system perform each and every day. We talk a lot about Everglades restoration, but flood control is really our bread and butter here, and our folks do such an incredible job that keeping us all dry. So I really appreciate it. Since 2012, the governing board and our senior management team have recognized June as Flood Awareness Month. And Drew, I understand you're going to be talking about that in your executive director's report. We're now going to go to employee recognition. So if my fellow board members will join me down below, we'll do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All right. I am proud to announce that our June 2025 Employee of the Month is Pablo Escobar, Engineering Construction Manager. Now, at the Water Management District, we have 58 microwave towers around the district, which are there to help communicate all the information in our field through our SCADA system back to headquarters here, so we can operate our flood control system, our water management system seamlessly and quickly. And it takes maintenance to keep all those microwave towers operating. And Pablo came to the district 3 years ago and was part of that inspection repair program. That's where he started, but last June he took over as the manager of that entire maintenance program for our microwave towers. And he jumped in as a manager and did some incredible things for us. What he saw when he took over was we had many years of backlog for the maintenance and repairs of some of the things on these microwave towers. And so he said, we got to do something about this because we're so dependent on those. And so he did some standardization, some streamlining, basically some real management applications for the management of this thing. And then as he implemented those, over the past year, we have caught up on 40% of that backlog, and it was many years of backlog. So he's really gotten the job done, but there's more because he got it done more efficiently. So he organized these work orders as whether they're ground work orders or climbing the towers work orders in such a way that now the average cost on these repairs is $8,000 less per repair than it used to be. And over this past year, he saved us $100,000, which goes right back into the coffers to do some great work here at the Water Management District. It's that kind of project change, that kind of management intervention that really makes a difference here at the Water Management District, and I really appreciate Pablo for that. And that is why he's our June Employee of the Month. Come on up, Pablo. All right, our June 2025 Team of the Month is the Saltwater Interface Mapping Team, which consists of Greg Cook, Stacy Kuntz, Jose Grisales, Lexi Hofert, Pete Kwiatkowski, Brian Moore, Hashit Soni Saini, and Justin Zumbro. All right, so we've got a very important mission, and that is understanding water supply and protecting our water supply, and planning for water supply here at the South Florida Water Management District. And when you're talking about our aquifers along the south coast of Florida, you need to know where that saltwater interface line is in those aquifers. And this mapping effort at the district started in 2009. We do it every 5 years, and we just finished one in 2024. It's a really complicated and large effort because we take data from 100 different wells across the south of Florida, and we pull the data from those wells. They're not all ours, so it's not consistent data, but we have to interpolate it to understand the chlorides. You do that with specific conductants, total dissolved solids, and of course, chlorides data. So they were able to take all that data, convert it to chlorides, map it out, and then scientifically draw a line on where that saltwater interface is in our aquifer. And we see changes over time because of pumping, because of sea level rise, those types of things. So as we do our water supply planning, you absolutely have to know where this is so you can position wells such that you don't exacerbate it. And quite frankly, this is Everglades restoration helps with this issue as well, because Everglades has the water in the Everglades has the counter pressure on that saltwater interface in the Biscayne aquifer. And so, hey, let's restore the Everglades and get more water there so we can help manage this issue as well. So, but we wouldn't know this issue if it weren't for this team, because this team is the only outfit that maps out this line. They do a great job. It's used by local governments, utilities, researchers, everyone. And so we're very grateful for them doing this every 5 years and doing it so well that we can rely on it. Congratulations, June Team of the Month.
Congratulations.
All right, now we have service recognitions. 25 years of service at the Water Management District is Christopher Graham. He's a crew chief in the St. Cloud Field Station. Now, Christopher came to us in the year 2000, 25 years ago, and he started at the Kissimmee Field Station. And that field station, he was a structure maintenance tech. And he did such a good job, Chris did, that he was quickly made crew chief of the structure maintenance team. And he's a great team player. You know how I know that? Because he won a Team of the Month award in 2009, 2012, and 2016, where he really helped guide his teams to great success in those field stations. You may not have heard of the Kissimmee Field Station because we don't have one anymore. Because he's been here for 25 years, he's seen the changes. He's now at the St. Cloud Field Station, where he's been doing a lot of work. And as you know, we've had some hurricane challenges up in that area of our district. Back in Charlie, Francis, and Jean, he was front and center trying to help address those conditions. And then again, in Ian and Milton in recent years. And so he's been there, he's been on the job, and really helped keep the society protected from these intense rains. Chris is an avid outdoorsman. He enjoys turkey hunting. You can see the picture, and you come away with that conclusion pretty quick. But he's also participated in some turkey calling competitions across the Southeast. He travels across the country and into Canada, chases outdoorsman activities, and of course he's a dedicated husband and very active in his church in Polk County. But really what we appreciate is what he does for the people of South Florida, helping keep our flood control system going. Thank you, Chris, for your 25 years. All right. Now we have a 30-year service recognition award, and that is for Lori Wenkert Lane. She's a senior project manager in ecosystem restoration. Now, she graduated in 1988 from Virginia Tech with a phycology degree, which is the study of algae. And so what happened was her father kept sending her job applications to Florida. Just like, you should apply here to Florida, apply here to Florida. I'm guessing he wanted to follow her, I'm not sure. But anyway, she said fine, and she found this outfit called the South Florida Water Management District, and she said, I'll apply there, I'll take a trip to Florida, it'll be a nice little visit. 5 months later, she was packing her bags, and she's been here 30 years ever since, and we're very glad for that. She came as an environmental scientist, and she went straight into Everglades research, working in our STA research group, looking at the vegetation and so forth, until she was promoted into a project management role where she, using her phycology degree, looked at periphyton treatment in STA cells, which we still have that kind of research going on. But that's where she learned how to be a project manager. And so then from that point, she went into project management as we started to build out our STA program and our STAs themselves, learning all the business side of project management, budget, schedule, all those types of things. And using that project management experience, she went back to water quality as a field project manager, where she worked on a lot of the water quality monitoring efforts around Lake Okeechobee and the Northern Everglades, really across the district. In 2020, she had to take a little break with some illness, and so during that time, you always end up reflecting. And she said, you know what, I'm going to keep going. I am going to get a degree in hydrology and water security, which she secured in 2022. And she realized during that time the importance of the district family and these types of things. But she's been busy with having a family of her own. Let me get to that later. But right now she's a project manager in our Northern Everglades and Estuaries Protection Program team, where she is. I always see her out in the field up in the northern part of of our district, working on those projects up there. She enjoys kayaking, traveling. She has 2 sons, Josh and Justin, a daughter, Ashley, 4 grandkids, and 1 great-grandchild, which sounds wonderful. Thank you so much, Lori, for your great 30 years of service. All right, another 30-year service award. This is Lucy Hernandez. She's a supervisor in Human Resource Information Services. And Lucy came to us 30 years ago, back in 1995, where she entered, she went in, took a job as a data entry technician in human resources. That's right, in the 90s we had data entry technicians. And I remember it was very necessary. But she jumped into that, and she had a great passion for systems and process and data itself. And so she quickly got moved through the ranks, got increasingly complex roles, and until she became a senior administrative resources associate, where she really interacted with SAP and our HR type functional systems when it came to managing information. And so along the way, she's been really involved in all of our HR information development over the years, and she even pursued a professional human resources certificate, which she got, and also completed an Associate of Science degree in business administration, where she put those to work, really making sure that we had the right kind of information management systems and processes in HR for our organization, which is quite large. And so she oversees human resources information for the whole life cycle of an employee: recruitment, onboarding, benefits, payroll, compensation, performance management, and retirement. It's all there. And so she's got that knack for doing great systems work when it comes to information, but marrying that in the human realm. And so we really appreciate that leadership that she has. And she's got a wonderfully positive spirit, which is what you need in HR. And so we really appreciate her 30 years here at the Water Management District. Thank you, Lucy. All right, we have last one, Mr. Chair. We have a Good Samaritan Award again today. That is for Hal Luo. She is a senior engineer in the Hydro Data Management System. And now Hal was out doing her work, her business in hydro data management out at the STA expansion 1 West expansion number 2. And if you know where that is in the middle of nowhere. And it is south of STA 1 West and right in the intersection of the Loxahatchee and Water Conservation Area 2. So it is in the middle of nowhere. So she was out there doing her job and came across another staff member at the district who had really urgent need of medical attention. That was obvious. She recognized it. She said, all right, we got to take care of this. And so she loaded him in the car and took him straight to the hospital, where she stayed with him to make sure he got that medical assistance. She stayed with him to make sure he could contact his family, contact the supervisor, contact all those folks, and really just made sure that he was taken care of. And he is okay now. He's back in the district working. Everything worked out fine. Don't know that it would have without Hal actually stepping in and taking that initiative and then seeing it through all the way to the end. And that's that character and that community care we try to foster at the Water Management District, which is why we wanted to recognize Hal Liu for actually knowing what to do, taking care of us, and taking care of a very serious situation. So we want to give her the Good Samaritan Award at the South Florida Water Management District. Thank you, Hal.
Well, thanks very much, Drew, for putting that together. By my calculation, that's 115 years of service awards you just gave. That's amazing. We're going to move now to number 4 on the agenda, which is agenda revisions. Molly, are there any revisions to the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Item 19 was revised. S630A, S630B, and S630C were added.
Great, thank you. We'll move now to item number 5, which is abstentions by board members. I'm going to poll the board to see if you have any abstentions, and I'll start with Mr. Butler. Oh, I'm sorry.
I have none,
Mr. Hurley,
Mr. Chair.
you swept. I should have started with Mr. Hurley. I'm not used to seeing you over there. Mr. Hurley. Colonel?
No, none.
I have none. Mr. Steinle?
None.
Mr. Bergeron?
None.
Mr. Spotswood? Vice Chair Wagner?
None.
Thank you. Mr. Steinle, as Chairman of the Audit and Finance Committee.
Thank you. Let me get organized here. So the Audit and Finance Committee met on April 10th, 25. I'll give you a review of that. We started with the Treasurer's investment update. This was information as of the end of February. The district continued its strategy of maintaining $5 million in the operating account each day and investing all the excess cash into overnight money market funds with an average yield of 4.3%. So that's the area where we're getting, where it's most liquid, but it's also giving us one of the highest yields. The committee discussed extension risk on the mortgage-backed security investments caused by rapid rate increases and highlighted the change in the district's spending profile in recent years to favor shorter duration investments due to greater capital expenditures and liquidity demands. In other words, we can't put away as much money long-term because we have short-term obligations to fund. The committee asked staff to work with consulting firm PFM to outline new policy recommendations for money market and mortgage-backed security investments at the next Audit and Finance Committee. We moved on to the Inspector General's audit report. The Inspector General presented the audit of investment management, which found overall funds were invested in accordance with the district's investment policy, and investment transactions were properly recorded in the accounting system. Also, that the district had strong internal controls for ACH vendor setup, and the audit made several recommendations to further strengthen the internal controls for the ACH vendor payment process to prevent fraud. The audit also examined the district's mortgage-backed security investments and recommended revising the investment and banking policy to address extension risk and consider using a laddered maturity strategy. We'll take that up on future A&F committees. I want to thank Governing Board Chairman Goss for filling in during our April 10th audit committee meeting. Appreciate you doing that. Also want to thank Tom Hurley for volunteering to be on the committee moving forward. And our next meeting will be on September 11th. That's it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chair Steinle. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Nope. All right. We're going to move now to the Big Cypress Basin Board report, and Colonel Roman is chair of the Big Cypress Basin Board.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. This is a summary of the April 25th, 2025 meeting of the Big Cypress Basin Board. We started our meeting with a report from our Basin Administrator, Lisa Keeler, who highlighted the recent groundbreaking for our communications tower that the board participated in. She finished the report with an update on the lease with Collier County and the amended changes, and governing board members that we have already approved that and moved that forward. Laura Lehman provided an overview and update on the Corkscrew Watershed Initiative early implementation projects. The goal of the CWI is to restore the ecology and historic hydrology in Audubon's Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary and surrounding natural areas within the Corkscrew Regional Ecosystem Watershed. The discussion focused on various projects being expedited for implementation, such as Lee County's Larry Kiker Preserve Project and land acquisition. Rory Feeney presented an overview of the land management projects in the Big Cypress Basin. The projects include trail maintenance and construction of the boardwalk for public recreation in Bird Rookery Swamp, enhance public access for Green Heart of the Everglades, aquatic vegetation maintenance, tree removal, and prescribed burning. He also highlighted recreational opportunities on district lands and shared a copy of the new recreational guide. Lucine Dadrian provided an update on the basin's 5-year capital improvement program, highlighting ongoing projects in design and construction, and she provided an update to the fiscal year 26 tentative budget, including potential cost increases. We closed our meeting with technical and staff reports, and our next Basin Board meeting will be July 7th at 11 a.m. That concludes my report, subject to your questions.
Thanks, Chairwoman. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Hearing none, we'll move on. We'll look at the approval of the minutes for the May 8th, 2025 meeting. I think that's the meeting we had down in Miami. Does anyone have any changes to the minutes of the May 8th meeting? Could I have a motion?
Make that motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second for approval. All those, let's see. We'll go ahead and call that question. Mr. Hurley? Yes. Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Colonel Norman?
Yes.
I'm going to vote yes. Mr. Steinle?
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron?
Yes.
Mr. Spotswood? Vice Chair Wagner?
Yes.
Thanks. That passes unanimously. And we'll go to Mr. Bartlett for the Executive Director's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Got a few things for you today. So the first thing on legislative session update. So right now, the chambers are in conference on the budget, and that just started this week. It's still in the early phases of that conference, but there's been some really good movement. For one, the Senate had their offer of $664 million for Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Program, a significant budget. That previously the House had much less than that, but they agreed and matched that number. So right now they are agreed on CERP. It's still early. I don't know if it will end up that way in the end. It's right now around $50 million short of the governor's request, but still $664 million is substantial funding, and it will absolutely help us keep our momentum. And we're very thankful for that because we're doing a lot of good stuff down here. On the federal side, while we're talking about Comprehensive Everglades Restoration, President Trump came out with his budget request, and it funded CERP at $446 million, which is consistent with previous years. Very solid funding in an age where a lot of funding cuts are being observed. This is the importance of Everglades restoration when your federal partners are also maintaining their budget levels. So we're very appreciative of that and very excited. Back to the state level, we've gotten funding. The funding seems settled on the governor's budget request for the Northern Everglades and other programs of ours, land management, for example. The flood control funds, there's a $150 million request. Right now, that does not exist in the two chambers' initial offers. It's still early. That can still change. That is something that will very much influence our budget discussions as we have to craft a tentative budget in July. So we'll definitely keep a close eye on that, and staff like Ken in Candy's shop are thinking about how to manage that budget. If we don't get anything, or if we get some, all that type of stuff. So a lot of that kind of analysis will be going on, and we'll certainly have a lot of discussions in July about it, depending on how it unfolds. So switching gears, going back to Cape Coral, as you recall, we did implement on May 2nd a very stringent water shortage restrictions. Basically, you cannot use your irrigation system to water your lawns in this very specific area of northern Cape Coral. And we did see a rebound in the water levels in that aquifer. Those restrictions are in place to protect the aquifer. If it gets too low, people's wells go dry, and you could have aquifer damage. And so we did see a rebound in those aquifer levels, so we're out of kind of the danger zone, but we're definitely not in the clear yet. And so we're trying to continue to work weekly with Cape Coral and Lee County to manage that situation. You may have seen that Cape Coral upped their fines for people violating the water restriction. So we're all committed to this and protecting the aquifer, and that seems to be working while Cape Coral does the infrastructure necessary to pull people off of their private wells for irrigation, which does work. So that's going in the right direction. So I'm glad to report that. I want to give an update on Southland, the Southland Water Resources Project. So basically, on April 29th, we did send a letter to Phillips and Jordan about the project, basically issued them and posted on our website the evaluation criteria we're using to evaluate that project. It's 20 different criteria, many different factors. Also, give them an invoice because they need to pay us to review their project. That's how the unsolicited proposals process works. It's $83,102. And they did pay that to us, so we had our first public meeting last Thursday in Belle Glade, where it was well attended, about 100 people. We were grateful for that. Phillips and Jordan presented the proposal that they were giving us, and we took public comment. And it was a very well-run meeting, and I appreciate staff for putting that on to take that public comment and public input. Phillips and Jordan has until August 27th to provide an updated proposal to us that addresses our 20 criteria, so we can really start our evaluation process, where we'll take their proposal, we'll take public comment, we'll take our own internal questions to really evaluate this project to decide whether it's viable and worthwhile, and put together the information that would give us that conclusion. And I can tell you, the public comments we heard, the questions about the project, they're the same questions district staff has. And so we want to answer those questions because we have them just as much as the public does, right? So we're definitely interested in addressing those comments we got from the public. Once we do our review, there is another public meeting that we will hold to present our findings, right? And because we want to get public feedback on what kind of findings we have through this process. And we'll take that public comment on our findings, we'll address it, we'll do some more evaluation, and ultimately, if we do to conclude that this is worthwhile, viable, and a good project to pursue under a public-private partnership, then we will bring it to the board for your consideration to enter into a comprehensive agreement with Phillips and Jordan to do this public-private partnership. And of course, there'll be public discussion during that. So, we are absolutely available to the public if they have questions and they want to engage us. We are going through this evaluation process now, and their input is very important. And ultimately, we'll bring it to you. We've done lots of projects through the South Florida Water Management District, and developing projects takes time, often more time than I would like, because I'd like to get to construction sooner. But to do it right, it takes that kind of evaluation. So this could take up to a year to do this type of evaluation. So not sure what we haven't gotten the updated proposal from Phillips and Jordan, but it could take a little bit of time, just so you have a time frame in your head. Also, I think it was this week, maybe last, we did release, May 28th, our sea level rise and flood resiliency plan. It is a fantastic document. It's out for public comment. This was put together by staff from across the district. And there is a lot of great information here, a lot of good project concepts in here on how we can make sure that into the future we got a resilient South Florida, we can maintain the way of life that we have in South Florida. And that only happens through these types of plans. It's a great plan, and I also want to give kudos to our production department, which really made it look very nice and accessible, and it made it a much more easy read. So thank you for that, but take a glance at it. It's very impressive. Okay, so let's move into the fact that it is Flood Control Awareness Month. I don't have a clicker. Do I need one? I'll just tell you. You do it for me? Thank you. So as you know, 75 years ago, this district was started. And it was started as the Central and South Florida Flood Control District. And we're celebrating our 75-year anniversary this year. And you can tell in the name, flood control was very important to this district, and it was honestly very necessary for the life that we know in South Florida right now. And that system was built out. And now here we are as the operator of that system. We talked about the microwave towers. We talked about how it all works. But moving this water, we have to be ready. We have to be responsive. And we've set up a system here in South Florida to really move that rainwater away from communities and help protect those investments that they've made. And it really takes effect after storms when we're really trying to make sure that people are protected. Next slide. But before the storm occurs, we got to make sure it's all working and everything's clean and ready to convey water. And so that's a lot of clearing stuff out of canals, maintaining structures, making sure the gates open and close, making sure the communication systems work. That is a constant maintenance program that we take very seriously because we have got to be ready for when those storms arrive. And another way that we get ready is through the Hurricane Freddy exercise. And that is something we did last week in this district. It was Hurricane Freddy. It was a devastating hurricane. It landed right here at headquarters and made a mess of things. But we had to figure out how to navigate that with personnel, within computer systems, with the field stations, with everything. It's a continuity of operations exercise. And quite frankly, every time we do a fake exercise on a hurricane, we learn. We learn from it. We do after-action reports. It helps train the new staff that are in the EOC on how to make sure you navigate the process. So it's a fantastic exercise. And to date, these exercise hurricanes have been much worse than the hurricanes that we've actually encountered to the water management district, to our infrastructure. But they're always quite devastating. That was a good exercise, so we feel a little bit, we are more prepared, as we always are, for the hurricane season with our water management system. So part of the issues of being 75 years old as an agency is our infrastructure is that old as well, and it is needing a lot of refurbishment and repair. And so we are at the district through the field stations and the construction bureau are absolutely trying to rebuild our flood control system, make sure the pumps are working, and it's quite a big effort, but it's one that we are taking very seriously because we've got aging infrastructure that we need to rebuild in a short amount of time, and that's in order to continue to provide the services to South Florida. The other part of it is the adaptation side, which is embedded in this resiliency plan that we have. Because we've grown, the landscape is different out there, the sea level has risen. We opened gates at high tide in Miami, the water flows the wrong way, we need to put pumps out there. So there's a whole different level of infrastructure investment in order to continue to provide that flood control to the South Florida Water Management District. And that is why we also want to recognize June as Flood Control Awareness Month, because often you're very rarely flooded as a citizen in South Florida, and that's because of us, right? And so we really want to make sure that people appreciate and they do the things they can do for their flood control system where they live, which is keep those storm drains clean. But to finish out the slideshow, I really want to thank the staff, right? Because from the resiliency plan through the maintenance programs, there is a lot of folks, boots on the ground, making sure that we can provide flood control into the future for the South Florida Water Management District, and without them, that would not happen. And so kudos to staff for doing such a great job for us in our flood control mission. And I think we have a video to commemorate Flood Control Month, so I'll turn it over to the video now.
Flood control is a critical component of life in Florida. If you haven't lived in Florida for long, you may not know that our climate has 2 seasons, wet and dry. Weather in South Florida has a way of ignoring the calendar and expectations of what's normal. We remind ourselves of this fact of living in the Sunshine State each June during Flood Awareness Month. The South Florida Water Management District operates and maintains the region's primary water management system. Vast in scale, the network of canals, levees, and structures was authorized by Congress more than 60 years ago to protect residents and businesses from floods and droughts. This primary system connects to community drainage districts and hundreds of smaller neighborhood systems to effectively manage floodwaters during heavy rain. As a result of this interconnected drainage system, flood control in South Florida is a shared responsibility between the South Florida Water Management District, county and city governments, local drainage districts, homeowners associations, and residents. Operations and maintenance staff at the South Florida Water Management District serve our region from 8 field stations as well as from our headquarters building in West Palm Beach. Field station staff are who you are most likely to see in your community, working every day to make sure the regional water management system operates smoothly and efficiently to provide flood control and protect regional water supplies. Throughout the year, operations and maintenance staff oversee more than 2,175 miles of canals, 2,130 miles of levees and berms, 915 water control structures, 620 project culverts, and 90 pump stations. They operate and maintain all of the equipment, and they have the specialized expertise needed to keep this vast water management system ready for whatever nature sends our way. Moving water to meet varying conditions and needs is essential to sustaining South Florida's people, our environment, and the economy. Make sure you check out our social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn, and visit sfwmd.gov/flood control for the most up-to-date information. Thanks for watching.
That's all I got, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Mr. Bartlett. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Executive Director Bartlett? Hearing none, we'll move on to general public comment. If you're here to comment on a specific agenda item, we ask that you hold your comment until we reach that item on the agenda. This comment period is for general comments not related to agenda items. Public comment for consent agenda item is 13 on the agenda, and public comments for discussion agenda is item 23, and that'll be heard after the presentation. The public had an opportunity to provide written comments prior to this meeting. We did not receive any written comments. Molly, is there general public comment?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. We'll begin with Newton Cook, followed by Gil Smart.
Good morning, Newton Cook, United Waterfowlers of Florida. It's good to be back on track. I've spent a little time with an operation recently. Several quick things today. First of all, most important is the recreation meeting will be here in this room on June 23rd at 5 p.m. The staff is fantastic. We always have a great agenda. And so everyone, of course, is invited, and those who have come, I think Mr. Butler's come. I think they enjoy them because we have a pretty interesting crowd of people show. I always tease Drew because we outdraw the governing board meetings. We have more people come to the rec meetings than here. A couple of things I missed while I was away. The rock mine. I've been doing this for 20 years. I've watched the EAA reservoirs go through every manipulation you can think of. $2.3 billion. I first stood here and spoke for both those reservoirs in 2003, and one of them's going to be done in 2035. We have an opportunity here to get the rock mine free, dug free, and also below ground reservoirs don't have near the impact on the surrounding area as above ground. EAA2 will raise the water table in Rodenberger and Holy Land up to 18 inches. That's going to make a total change of the topography there, and that's because it's above ground. The other thing is Lake O. Thank you, the Colonel and Mother Nature. I got down below 11 feet, down to 11 feet. And we have about 30 days there. If we get 30 days more before it gets to 13, we'll get the submerged vegetation coming back. And then we can pray for regular weather the rest of the year. And hopefully next year we do a repeat. About 3 years, we'll have the vegetation back where it belongs. But Mother Nature will decide. Speaking of that, we need a committee on Lake O, a management committee. Nearly every body of water in this state has a management committee, and we don't have anything on Lake Okeechobee. And we need that committee because it's a very complex system, and all the different agencies should be on that committee. And it would help us with the spray problem, where we have a lot of people so upset with spray, they're threatening. They don't even list when they're going to spray anymore because they're afraid people are going to show up and cause problems. We don't need that. And the reason you have it is we don't have upfront explanation of what's going on and why. And we need 2 or 3 times a year for the group to get together and kind of set out what we need to do at Okeechobee to keep it healthy. The SDAs are in trouble. Q-Well's coming next year. A lot of work going on this year. They're in so much trouble, we're talking about eliminating most of the duck hunting. I mean, that's unheard of. People came from all over the world to hunt the STAs. And we're talking about eliminating it down because the habitat has
Please
gone
wrap
so
up your
bad.
comments, Mr. Cook.
I'm sure. If they don't like, the ducks don't like it, it ain't doing what it's supposed to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. We'll hear next from Gil Smart, followed by Cody Rubmer.
Morning, Governing Board. My name is Gil Smart. I'm Policy Director for Friends of the Everglades. We were founded in 1969 by Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. For more than 2 decades, Everglades restoration has been a collaborative effort uniting government agencies, conservation groups, agricultural interests, scientists, and local governments. Billions of dollars have been spent and allocated, accompanied by extensive planning, modeling, and public engagement. When it comes to restoration, we're all in this together, or at least we're supposed to be. The Southland Rock Mine project was the subject of a hearing last week in Belgrade. I saw a few of you there. As the district goes through its process trying to determine, among other things, whether there's a public benefit to this proposal. But the reality, as articulated by many people at the meeting last week, was that this looks a lot like a private mining venture disguised as public infrastructure, and one which could cause public problems. As many have noted, the proximity of the rock mine to the EAA reservoir could threaten the integrity of the reservoir. They're going to be blasting at least 10 years beyond the completion date of the reservoir, maybe as much as 20 years past. Second, this project has no water quality component. The applicant and Big Sugar landowners figure they can just connect to STA 5.6, but the district is already working to connect the lake to 5.6. So what's happening to that plan? Is it just being tossed out? Are we substituting this one instead? And what effect would this have on the QBEL? Then there's the assertion right there in the applicant's website that they will be seeking public funding for this. So we're going to dig the hole, sell the aggregate for private profit, and turn it all over to the district and let the public foot the rest of the bill. And this constitutes a public benefit? The public never asked for this. As I said at the meeting last week, sound planning begins with identifying a need and then developing a project to address it. But the Southland Rock Mine does the reverse. It starts with a predetermined project and reshapes the planning to fit that agenda. What greater benefits are we sacrificing by approving piecemeal projects instead of approaching Everglades restoration as a comprehensive, unified effort? Bear this in mind, please, as you consider this project, because when it comes to saving the Everglades, we are all in this together. But there's a clear line between true restoration and exploitation that leaves the public footing the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smart. We'll hear next from Cody Rubmer, followed by Captain Rufus Wakeman.
Good morning. Captain Cody Rubner, a small business owner out of Stuart, Florida. I'm here today to tell you how disappointed the public is in this process. And for anyone who cares about Florida's water quality, the Everglades, and our coastal ecosystems, watching this play out in real time, their already slim trust in local and state governments is eroding. CEPP was built on a rare bipartisan cooperation, and it was an agreement between people from all walks of life to restore water flow and heal the Everglades and our coast, and it was built on public trust. Yet, over the years, we're watching special interests, and particularly the sugar industry, find ways to chip away at that vision to protect their bottom dollar. And now we're here watching it all happen again with this rock mine. How can people feel good about this process? You know, many people don't have the time or resources to attend this stuff, so they can submit written comment. There were the commissioners of the Palm Beach County Commission acknowledged that there were 6,000 emails sent in. That's basically referenced in about 2 seconds, and then we move right on. So the people that have submitted written stuff, they don't feel like they're heard. And then if you do attend this, you get 2 or 3 minutes to try to, explain a pretty nuanced position and a thoughtful position on such a complex topic. And you present a bunch of questions, and you never really hear dialogue around your questions. And the applicant should be the one that has to answer those questions, and seems to never really get passed through. And I have to be honest. This process feels broken and at times rigged, and if I sound like a conspiracy theorist, I feel like it's on our appointed and elected officials to prove otherwise. And the burden of proof on how this private applicant couldn't negatively affect all this processes that we're committed to together, the burden of proof is on them to show how it won't be bad, not on us to show how it is bad. Near the elevator at the county commissioner meeting, I heard a conversation involving the applicant say that all these people just misunderstand this issue and it's just a bunch of nonprofits competing over dollars. And it's incredibly offensive because many of us are there on our own time dollars. It's also a little bit ironic because that developer is quite literally competing over development dollars. And that's why they're there. We show up on our own time, and When it comes to CERP projects, these developers have the skill sets to execute them. And the ones that have been approved, we're on the same team if they can execute those projects in a way that is impactful for water management. We're told that this mine is going to bring 150 jobs to the community. You guys work with some brilliant scientists. Science extends over ecology and biology. Where's this socioeconomic analysis of how this could impact our tourism-driven economy if we lose thousands of jobs, we hemorrhage those around the state while adding 150 in the center of the state? We'd like answers. I'd like to know what level of public tax dollar investment's going on here. I heard that 18 million's already been invested by the developer. If I bought a brand new boat and a brand new truck tomorrow and showed up at the ramp without trips planned for the rest of the year, that would be on me, the business. It's a business investment, and they haven't invested $18 million for the betterment of Florida. They're doing it because they see business profit at the end, and that's good business, that's sound business. But this project isn't a part of CERP, it's not a part of the plan we agreed to, and we'd like some transparency when it comes to the funding and execution. People are losing faith in the institutions. They shouldn't have to. I picked up the packet about how well all these CERP projects are going on the way in. We should be celebrating that together and not focus on a sideshow at the circus. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rubner. We'll hear next from Captain Rufus Wakeman, followed by Mark Perry.
Good morning. My name is Captain Rufus Wakeman. I live on Jensen Beach on the banks of the St. Lucie River. The constant discharges of the pollutant-laden water into the St. Lucie and Caloosahatchee rivers is criminal. Blue-green algae, polluted water, increased sediment, and the constant spraying of Roundup and glyphosate just has to stop. The stranglehold Big Sugar has had on the system for many years is terrifying for our marine and estuarine environments in Martin County and Lee County, but that's another story. I strongly oppose the rock mines in the Everglades agricultural area. Once again, we are here at Tallahassee fighting to save the Everglades. This project really has no water storage component in mind. It is clearly a for-profit private project. The EAA should remain either farmland or swamp, not a rock mine. After all, the entire EAA used to be the Everglades, so I'd rather see a swamp. I know I speak for thousands upon thousands of other people who cannot be here to attend this meeting. How much of our tax dollars will be used to fund this project? What risks are there for contaminating the aquifer? What risks are there for contamination of the EAA reservoir? What precedent does this set for other landowners to create rock mines or develop their property within the EAA? We collectively ask you not to grant this project because as it could greatly reduce or delay any Everglades restoration efforts and possibly lead to further development and destruction of the EAA, which could in turn have huge negative impacts on the EAA reservoir, which has already started and in place and contribute to the destruction of the Everglades itself. When the National Park System was created, the intentions were for all parks to be respected and preserved equally. They aren't going to pave Yellowstone or Yosemite or the Grand Canyon, but they'll certainly try to pave the Everglades, and we won't stop trying to save her. So in closing, I'll say it's basically up to you, South Florida Water Management District, to determine the fate of the single most valuable resource in South Florida, the Everglades National Park. So please choose wisely and choose to preserve it for future generations and to protect all the creatures, great and small, that call the Everglades home. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Captain Wakeman. We'll hear next from Mark Perry, followed by Captain Chris Whitman.
Good morning, Governing Board. Mark Perry, Florida Oceanographic Society. Two things I want to kind of cover quickly is that, we're constantly looking at how we can help the watersheds in our area to get water quality back up to what it should be. And I encourage the new governing board members to read at the bottom of your agendas. There's an agenda item background, which has a couple of reports. The two reports you should look at are the CERP report from the Corps of Engineers and also the NEEP report. The NEEP is the Northern Everglades and Estuaries Protection Plan. And I want to ask the governing board to have another meeting here presented to you by all three agencies involved in the NEEP plan, and that is the South Florida Water Management District, Florida DEP, and Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. The last time you had this kind of presentation about NEEP was back in 2022, And we really need this kind of detail to get back to you as a board to see how we're doing in implementing basin management action plans and also the BMPs that are supposed to be implementing to get us to the total maximum daily loads in all 3 of these watersheds. So please schedule a neat meeting. The other kind of quick thing is also the Southland project. We were there for those meetings, and you'll hear me talking a lot about the NEAT process, but also sending water south and how we can restore Everglades. And we've been spending about $2.2 billion over the past, since 96, 97 or so, to build STAs, stormwater treatment areas, and to build back in Everglades into that 700,000 acres of EAA. You know, we struggle to kind of continue to do that and build these projects, and Everglades restoration projects are working. But along comes a project that is really, truly going to be a rock mine. It's not a water resource project. You look at the storage analysis that Tom McVicker did for this project, and it's not going to have the storage capacities in that open pit that you're talking about. They estimate at 97,000 acre feet. It's going to, or 120,000 acre feet. It's not going to be anywhere near that for storage. And where the treatment is going to be, they're going to have to use our STAs. And again, that's all the basin runoff that's going to come in there. So it's all about the owners. And let's not talk about Phillips and Jordan. They're owned by the owners. And the owners are U.S. Sugar Corporation and the Okeelana Corporation. Those 2 sugar landowners for that 8,000 acres are getting you to approve this kind of as a water resource project. But they only needed that because they needed that approval from the Palm Beach County for the development order for this project. So they're step by step. They don't only own the land, they own the people that work the land, they own the people that govern the land, they own all of the politics that are involved in this. And you're being told not to talk about this project or let's go through this process, but it's not a water
Please wrap
resource
up your
project.
comments.
It's a project. I do want to leave you new governing board members that a handout that I gave to other members. This is a great compilation of reports and things for that. So for
Thank you, Mr. Perry.
Mr. Hurley and Mr. Spots.
We'll hear next from Captain Chris Whitman, followed by Captain Mike Holliday.
Good morning, Governing Board, and nice to meet you, to the new board members I haven't met yet, Mr. Spotswood, Mr. Hurley. I'm Captain Chris Whitman, co-founder of Captains for Clean Water. We were told that the letter sent by Executive Director Bartlett wasn't being used as a site identification letter, and it was, in fact, and Palm Beach County approved their permit prematurely as a result. We were also told that DEP wouldn't issue the ERP permit until the Water Management District completed their analysis of the proposal. And now, as of last Friday, DEP has filed their intent to issue that permit. All of this has happened without a single agendaed board discussion with public input. How is that acceptable? Is Governor DeSantis aware that these actions have taken place without the input of his governing board? According to Florida Public-Private Partnership Statute 255.065, by definition, is the responsible public entity, also defined as a regional entity that serves a public purpose. It appears that you have interpreted this to mean that you, the staff of the South Florida Water Management District, had the authority to send a letter to Palm Beach County like you did on New Year's Eve of 2024 without governing board approval. The responsible public entity is the governing board that Governor DeSantis appointed, not the staff. Is Governor DeSantis aware of this? This proposed mine is being painted as a beneficial water resource project that is being pursued in the spirit of Everglades restoration. But every actual Everglades restoration project this agency has engaged in, Governor DeSantis has publicly highlighted the importance of those projects with press conferences and public messaging. There has been no public communication about this rock mine by Governor DeSantis, which again raises the question, is Governor DeSantis aware this rock mine is being pursued by the sugar industry in Phillips and Jordan and is being fast-tracked through before his governing board has had the opportunity to provide input and question their concerns? And the water we're talking about and fighting for the Everglades is the very water that Phillips and Jordan partners, Florida Crystals and U.S. Sugar, just claimed belongs to them. They made this claim in a lawsuit that went all the way to the federal appellate court, and they still lost. The irony is not lost on us that today you are awarding a contract to Phillips and Jordan for the project that widens the canal and delivers water to our Everglades reservoir, at the same time blasting a rock mine next door that could impact that very reservoir. There is very much more to this than just the future of this proposed mine site. At stake with this process.
Please wrap up your comments, Captain.
At stake is the decision, it is the future of land available for true restoration projects and for everlasting legacy of this board and Governor DeSantis. Thank you.
Thank you, Captain Whitman. We'll hear next from Captain Mike Holliday, followed by Nathan Outlaw.
Good morning. My name is Mike Holliday. I'm a fishing guide from Stewart. And the Southland project's about water and essentially the control of water. It's about a publicly owned resource that a private corporation is trying to gain control of. And there's major vocal opposition to this project, yet it's still being fast-tracked through the system. It's like our voices don't matter to either you guys or the governor. This is an 8,600-acre rock mine that likely can't get approval because of the potential threat to the aquifer and the South Florida's drinking water. So they're utilizing a loophole in the system to pitch it as a beneficial water resources project. But as most people know, rock mines are not conducive to water storage because contamination is likely. The next step will be to use their political clout to get the taxpayers to pay for it. That's the next likely step. The likely plan is for taxpayer-funded rock mine that will eventually be a taxpayer-funded water supply for the sugar industry. This is a political strategy to divert money away from the Everglades restoration and the construction of the EAA reservoir. If this was actually a beneficial water resources project, it would take water from the system, clean it, return it back to the system as clean water. All this project is going to do is take water from the system. This is a private corporation's ruse to gain ownership of publicly owned water. The head of the district sent a letter to Palm Beach County saying this is likely a viable water resources project. Palm Beach County approved the project based on that letter, a letter written by a lobbyist from U.S. Sugar, one of the owners of this project. Sending a politically influenced letter misrepresenting the district's approval is an irresponsible abuse of power. It undermines the credibility of a governmental agency, yet nothing has been done. Nobody said a word. Why hasn't the district at least contacted a land planner from Palm Beach County and clarified their position? I mean, he was at the district meeting last week. He sat in the front row. The lack of transparency and effort from the district is telling in this position. This is not an 8,600 acres of engineered wetland. It's a rock mine. They're gaming the system, and they're using you to do it. You are the pawns in their system. You know this project's a farce. You have the power to stop it. The real question is, do you have the courage to stop it? I hope you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Captain Holliday. We'll hear next from Nathan Outlaw, followed by Ashley Weber.
My name is Nathan Outlaw, and I own a fly fishing outfitter in Melbourne, Florida. I've never come to speak at one of these, but I took time out of my day and away from my business to come down here and speak on my concern about the rock mine. I worked in the automotive industry for 7 years and only fished recreationally and was unaware of the extent of the damage that has been done to all of our waterways. I decided to quit my job, take an 80% pay cut, and pursue my passion for fishing and the environment. I now get to see firsthand the changes, good or bad, and how this affects businesses from retail, hospitality, and others. All businesses, especially in Florida, rely on a healthy ecosystem and healthy populations of fish for not only the $128 billion tourism industry, but also Florida residents to enjoy the hundreds of millions a year. Through Captains for Clean Water and other organizations, I learned about the issues we were all facing in waterways in Florida. I've also learned about some of the incredible progress all of you have made on making the Everglades restoration under the leadership of Governor DeSantis. But this rock mine has been fast-tracked with very little public input and no public comment from Governor DeSantis. This rock mine could put in jeopardy all of the progress that has been made to protect and restore the Everglades, which Governor DeSantis has done an incredible job so far, especially the EAA Reservoir, which was a $4 billion project. I may not know the exact dollar figures on how tourism could be affected in South Florida by the poor decisions. However, I can tell you more and more of my customers are taking their money, which is up to $10,000 a year per customer, to destinations such as Cuba, Puerto Rico, Mexico, and others where water quality is not a concern and they can still have incredible fishing without dealing with the frustrations of algae blooms, the Everglades drying up, seagrasses dying, and so on. This money could be going to local guides, restaurants, hotels, but instead, anglers are fed up with mediocre fishing, which is caused directly by our poor management of our environment. We need to be fighting to keep our restoration efforts moving forward and bring the Everglades back to a healthy ecosystem. If the future of the EAA is rock mines disguised as restoration projects, then the legacy that all of you and Governor DeSantis will leave will be forever tarnished and the Everglades will suffer irreversible damage. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Outlaw. We'll hear next from Ashley Weber, followed by Scott Miller.
Hello, my name is Ashley Weber, and I'm a business owner in Southeast Florida. I'm an artist and a fly fisherman, and I'm heavily involved in the outdoor industry here in South Florida all the way to the Florida Keys. I spend a lot of time in the Everglades. I took time away from my busiest work season yet to express my concern for your proposal and oppose the rock mine. I respectfully would like to express my frustration with the process or lack of this project has taken thus far. I feel confidently that my concerns are mirrored amongst a very large amount of people that care about Everglades restoration and beyond. I travel all over the world to fish, and it breaks my heart every time I come back home to my home waters, which inspired my whole life and my work, and to see that our water is in consistent decline. I wish that you all cared as much about our protecting our natural resources as the rest of the citizens in this state. I hope that each of you realize that by allowing this to pass, it will be in direct opposition of your constituents' wishes that you played a part in destroying the Everglades and protecting one of our nation's natural wonders. I am worried about how this may divert and thus delay funding from Everglades restoration projects. What I can't understand is why can't we just delay this until it has been modeled like every other water resource project? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Weber. We'll hear next from Scott Miller here in the room, then we'll move over to our Zoom participants.
Hello, good day everybody. I'm Captain Scott Miller. I'm a local, in fact I live like 10 minutes away, and I'm a fly fishing guide. Okay, so I'm out locally and I duck hunt in the STAs. I also go down to Everglades National Park. In fact, I'm giving up a day in the Everglades, a place that I love very, very much, to be here today to speak to you. So first off, I guess I just posed the question is are we doing something that's going to make things better? Or are we going to be doing something that makes things worse when it comes to this rock mine or water resource management project that we're talking about here today? I'm not going to take up too much of your time. I just want to keep it simple. Captain Chris over here said that the resource project, sorry, it's my first time doing this. I'm not very good at public speaking, but we spent a lot of money to protect the Everglades, and you can see a lot of people really do care about it. I've watched it firsthand get worse and worse and worse. I've watched the SDAs get worse and worse and worse. And are we repeating mistakes from the past, creating big levees, choking off the state, mismanaging the water, all in the benefit of private interest groups, whether it be the sugar industry or development industry? And we have an opportunity here to actually take a step back, look at everything. Everybody's giving you very detailed facts and well thought out presentations. I'm up here speaking off the cuff and just asking you to really look at this project and understand what's at stake here and how much all these people really care and are trying to do whatever they can to protect our state for years and years to come. I just have a 8-month-old at home, and I'm looking forward to taking him out and showing him this great state, okay, from north to south, and that's what's at stake here, and that's what we're asking. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Captain Miller. Now moving over to our participants on Zoom, we'll hear first from Scott Martin, followed by Ryan Rossi.
Hello, everyone. Scott Martin here, anglers for Lake Okeechobee. Appreciate you letting me speak. Just want to give you a quick update on the lake. And also that I echo a lot of what Newton Cook says in regards to the lake. The lake's at a little over 11 feet right now. I don't see it going down too much more from where we're at with the rainy season kind of starting. But I do want to give you some updates. You know, we entered into this recovery mode in hopes to regain our SAV. And the SAV is obviously the filter for Lake Okeechobee's water. This water that comes out of Lake Okeechobee, you know, that eventually goes to the Everglades is very important to clean. And with this recovery that we've been in, as of right now, and I've been monitoring the lake, I see 0 SAV recovery at this point. Now, I'm still optimistic that if we stay low for the next 30 days or even beyond that we should get some. But my fear is that we're going to lose it the minute the lake comes back up to a high level. So I'm encouraging the Corps of Engineers to really watch the water levels as it starts to rise, to really take that in consideration. Let's don't drown out any progress that we get. The other encouraging thing is that we've got hard bottom in most of the littoral zones right now. 5 years ago, we had a lot of soft bottom in those same exact zones, and we talked about dredging and having to get into a lot of projects in the lake to dredge to get that back to the original sand bottom. We have accomplished that with, fortunately, with the high water. That's the only good thing high water did is it washed out a lot of those estuaries and that littoral zone and got it back down to the hard sand bottom. So we have an opportunity to gain our vegetation back. Now, I hear the word restoration projects, and I hear the word budgets, and I hear $4 billion for this project and $2 billion for that project. But what disappoints me is that we don't hear restoration projects inside of Lake Okeechobee. I don't hear about a budget inside of Lake Okeechobee. The actual source of the water that goes to the Everglades that we need to clean, there is no current projects inside of Lake Okeechobee being done. I know there's a lot of passionate anglers there. A lot of my friends are there at this meeting speaking right now. A lot of people from the coast. You guys are fishermen, and I just hope that you guys are as passionate about Lake Okeechobee and getting the SAV back so we can clean the water within Lake Okeechobee. Let's get projects inside of Lake Okeechobee because we've missed that opportunity. FWC has not done a project in the lake since it's gone low. South Florida Water Management hasn't done a project inside the lake since the water's gone low. We're just letting the water go low and hope it comes back. When we're spending billions of dollars on projects east, west, north, and south of Lake Okeechobee, why aren't we planning projects inside of Lake Okeechobee to gain back that 50, 60, 70,000 acres of submerged vegetation that Lake Okeechobee used to have every single day of the week, where it can clean its own water and make the fishing, the hunting, the wildlife, and our economy better.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. We'll hear next from Ryan Rossi, followed by Matt DePaulis.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
We hear you.
Thank you. Good morning. Ryan Rossi with the South Florida Water Coalition. Thank you, as always, for the opportunity to comment. Last month in Miami, I mentioned that the drought conditions we've been experiencing were creating concern about our area's water supply. Fast forward to today, and although drought conditions continue to moderately exist, we are at least beginning to see the rain we've been hoping for. Certainly that's a welcome change for our area, which has so desperately needed it. However, I would caution that it's not quite a crisis averted. Perhaps this year it will be, and no one is disputing that's a good thing, that we're finally getting the water that we need to pull us out of this. However, what happens in the future? I say this all the time. You know, managing our water requires a balance, I think, of both the short term, that's how conditions are now, and the long term, that is anticipating and most importantly, preparing for how conditions might be in a number of scenarios, going forward. And as I illustrated in my recent opinion piece in the Sun Sentinel, our communities are depending on us to get protecting our water supply right. Many are aware that we will face a year when droughts are even hotter and longer than what we've seen recently, and that rain might not come in the quantity that's needed to pull us out of one. So making sure it's always, that is, water is available is paramount to South Florida's viability, and I think that continuing to look into increasing our storage capabilities is part of this equation too. So in short, I encourage you to continue prioritizing and working through solutions to protecting our supply for our millions of South Florida residents. future generations, I'm sure, will be glad that you did. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Rossi. We'll hear next from Matt DePaulis. Mr. DePaulis, please unmute your mic.
Hi, I'm Matt DePaulis for the Sanibel Captiva Conservation Foundation. So we're seeing flows coming down the Caloosahatchee again. S79 has shot back up out of that stressful range finally, and not because of anything that any management decisions that were made, but because those rains finally came. And this is really indicative of how this entire process has gone throughout this dry season. And when I say we, I'm talking about all the stakeholders on the West Coast, all the stakeholders on the East Coast too, throughout this recovery process, have been trying to engage, trying to figure out how we can share the burden and get the lake low, support that SAV regrowth while also not causing undue stress to the estuaries on either side. And it doesn't seem like that happened at all throughout this process. The East Coast got blown out in the beginning of the recovery process, and we've been in the stressful zone here on the West Coast for over a month now. So I really hope, looking forward as we're trying to understand what went on through this process, that we really understand how stakeholders are engaging with this process and how stakeholders are perceiving this process to go. Because we saw the estuary being continually stressed for the past month since late April. We were in stressful ranges, and throughout that entire process, we saw minimal communication from district and Army Corps, showing that the goals of water that we were even aiming for at S79 were ticking down and down and down, to say nothing of the fact that those goals weren't being achieved the entire time either. So this isn't representative of the shared burden that we all agreed to when we went through the LOSUM process. We're getting physical stress in our estuary, we're getting mental stress of stakeholders who are being completely ignored and cut out of this system, all seemingly so that other stakeholders within the system can realize there's zero tolerance for any discomfort whatsoever. So I'm glad we're out of the woods now. Seemingly those rains are coming and the estuary is recovering, but overall this process was really disconcerting. I'd also just like to mention a lot of the great points that were brought up around the Southland mine project moving forward. I think the district really needs to lock in and understand, when they say an identified potential project, other people and other governments are reading that to mean identified viable project. If we were really taking on a water project that was going to help Everglades restoration, why aren't we starting at the place of what does Everglades restoration need? It seems to need more storage. And what we're actually asking is not how do we support Everglades restoration, but how do we put a mine here in the EAA? We are restoring the Everglades today because of the mistakes of the past, because we rushed into the process of destroying the Everglades, and I hope that we're not making similar mistakes with the Southland project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DePaulis. Mr. Chairman, we have no additional general public comment.
Thanks, Mike. And thank you all very much for your comment. And for those of you who took time off from your day to be here to comment in person, I appreciate your making the trip to see us. We're going to go now to board comment, and I'm going to start off. And I normally don't say much, so I've got a lot of banked time. So bear with me today, because I may go on a little bit more than I normally do, but I'd like to clear, I think, some things up. We had our first public engagement meeting on Southland on the unsolicited proposal last week in Belle Glade. And I'd like to thank Mayor Wilson and his council in Belle Glade for their hospitality. I'd also like to thank Jennifer Reynolds, Ms. Pigman, and many others from our staff who ran that meeting and did a great job. I think I'd also like to thank Mr. Matt Eitzen, who works for Phillips and Jordan. He gave the presentation. He did a wonderful job with that presentation. So I had a chance to listen to the comments. I listened to people speaking both for and against the project. And I also heard a lot of questions, and I viewed it as a really constructive few hours, and I thank all those who made it happen. I will note that Mr. Steinley was at that meeting, and I will note that the meeting, I think, was recorded, so anyone who wasn't there can probably listen to it. I don't think you can see it, but you don't have to. You can listen to it. As a result of the meeting, I've got a couple comments and some questions for staff. I don't need the questions answered now for staff, but I'd ask you to look at them and I think they're questions you've heard before and questions you're probably already considering. But before the governing board hears this again, I would like to have some answers for those questions as we go through the process. And as an overall observation for those out there, the unsolicited proposal process is new to us. I listened really closely to the comments, and a number of people referenced losing trust with the district over the last couple months. And that's a trust that Mr. Bartlett, this governing board, and our staff have worked really hard to cultivate over the last 6+ years. And I'm the first to acknowledge that this process has been a little bit frustrating as we're trying to figure it out. Last Thursday's meeting was the first meeting of any kind regarding discussion of Southland that has been formally noticed. We talked about it briefly, I think, in our February board meeting, but it wasn't formally noticed. I think Mr. Bartlett brought it up in his executive director's comments, and we talked about it a little bit, but I didn't want anyone to make a presentation because it hadn't been noticed, so I asked Mr. Eidson not to make his presentation there. The public really hadn't had an opportunity to comment specifically on Southland until Thursday. And that's really not our typical process. And I think that's led to confusion, and I think it's led to frustration. And in the future, I want to make sure that that changes. If we're going to do another unsolicited proposal, I'd like to get my governing board colleagues' thoughts on this, but I think that we need to make sure it comes to the governing board earlier in the process so that we can ensure that there is a public discussion of it earlier in the process so that it doesn't go along for months and months without any sort of public discussion. And I'd like to discuss that further with you all during this discussion. And for those of you who think I should have weighed in with Palm Beach County, with their Board of County Commissioners, I really appreciate your view on that. I don't agree with you. Given the articles in the paper, the social media outreach, the thousands of emails they received, the briefings from their staff they received, the remarks made in the hours of public comment they had, I'm pretty confident that they know exactly where we are in our process. And I'm equally confident that a call from me telling them what they already knew as to where we were in our process would not have changed their mind on a unanimous vote. They have their process, and we have ours. And speaking of process, the unsolicited proposal process is one, as we're figuring it out, and I was thinking of an analogy, and I'm not really great at these, but I'm going to try this one. It's a little bit like a Father's Day present. So let's say you tell your wife you want a shirt, and your wife tells your kids, hey, you know, Dad wants a shirt for Father's Day. And so Father's Day, you unwrap your present, and hey, you get a shirt, but you know, you needed a Brooks Brothers 16x33 white non-iron button down, and they give you a nice Guy Harvey short sleeve extra large shirt with a hula dancer on the back. It's a nice shirt, you ask for a shirt, but it's not really what you need. This process is a little bit like that because I don't know exactly what we need. I don't know exactly what we have because we really haven't started to work through it yet. This is definitely a storage project, but is it the storage project we need? Is it at the place we need it? And is it at a price that's fair to taxpayers? And it's so early in the process, I just don't know the answer to any of those questions. So my questions for staff is, if we were going to use the exact same public resource and we were going to use the exact same footprint, would we build the exact same project? And that's something I think we need to look at as we move forward with this. And if not, what would be different? Would there be a treatment component? The other question I have, and I heard it asked here today, is how is this going to impact Q-Bell? It's something that we're very worried about. We think about it constantly, and every single thing we do impacts that. So I want to make sure we understand before we say yes or no on this, that we have a full understanding of it. I also saw a letter from Congressman Mast. He's very concerned that this is going to have an impact on the EAA reservoir, as are we all. But Congress has spent a lot of money, as is the Corps of Engineers and the federal government, on the EAA. So if there is going to be an impact on the EAA, we need to know it. And if there's a negative impact on the EAA in the future, who's going to pay for fixing it? And again, I don't know the answer to those questions. We need to figure that out. So I also need to know if we performed a cost-benefit analysis to understand what each foot of storage is going to cost and whether that's the lowest cost and how it compares to other storage costs we have in the district. And I know none of this is rocket science. I know you guys are working on all of this. If this is going to be a public-private partnership, and I think that the applicant is proposing to make profit on this through excavated aggregate, which is fine, but is there going to be some sort of profit sharing with the taxpayer on that? That's something we need to understand. The other thing I think we need to look at, and I don't think we have at all, and this goes back to, 10 years ago, is we had looked at trying to purchase this property at one point, and now that the property owners have indicated their willingness to take this out of agricultural production, is this something that we can go back and ask, would you be willing to sell this land to us? And I don't know if we've had that discussion with them. So I read state statute 255.065. It's pretty clear. We're in the really early stages of this evaluation. Mr. Bartlett mentioned that just last week we accepted the applicant's payment to begin the evaluation process. I stated in February that we were really just at the beginning of this process. And although I keep saying that, there seems to be a little bit of confusion, and I have a feeling some of that confusion is due to the applicant gilding the lily a little bit as to using Mr. Bartlett's letter to suggest that the district has approved the project. We have not approved the project. We haven't even started looking at the evaluation of the project yet. So, and I have tremendous respect for Phillips and Jordan, and I know we wouldn't be as far along with Everglades restoration without Phillips and Jordan working with us, and we've got almost $100 million contract we're probably going to sign later in this meeting. I have a lot of respect for him, but I am going to caution Mr. Eidson that from this point forward with this project, the spin really needs to stop. The lobbying needs to stop, and we need to just let our staff do the evaluation based on the facts, the science, the engineering, and the economics, and not on spin. One of the criteria 255065 directs us to examine when determining whether this project is in the public interest is public comment. But we want, I think, more than public comment, and very fortunately for us, we have one of the most gifted collaborators I have ever met working for the district, and that's Jennifer Reynolds. And it's my understanding that she's going to be helping us work through a collaboration with stakeholders to make sure that everyone is involved in this. And it's not just one public comment session, but that we actually do reach out and talk to people and understand what they're thinking, particularly from the scientific standpoint, to make sure that we have all the science we need moving forward. So after the staff performs its evaluation, we're going to have another meeting for the governing board to decide, and we're going to have to decide whether the proposed project is in the public interest. And that bar really is much higher than just a bar of causing no harm. That bar is, there has to be a legitimate public benefit. And so I know this has been frustrating to some to date, me a little bit too, but the beauty of this process is we have options. There's nothing in statute that says we have to proceed with an unsolicited proposal that we don't like. We don't have to build the project the way the applicant proposes, but we do have the opportunity to negotiate in the public's interest after working through the issues with staff, stakeholders, our partners, both at the DEP and the Corps of Engineers. And I know the Corps is not a partner in this project particularly, but they are our partner in CERP, and I want to make sure that since this could inevitably impact CERP, I'm very interested in the Corps' input and the Corps' expertise on this. So personally, I really like these projects. It's a project where everyone has skin in the game, and I want to assure anyone who has concerns about Southland that I don't like them at any cost. And this is a project that needs to be making engineering sense, it needs to make environmental sense, it needs to make economic sense, and it needs to make sense of all of that for the taxpayer of Florida. And that is the longest public comment I've ever given. And I will now stop, and I will move to Mr. Steinley, to my right.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm glad you said that, and at risk of sort of diminishing the message, I'm gonna comment on the same. So I attended out in Belglade the public comment meeting. I heard a few things. I heard obviously Phillips and Jordan present how they would, in very broad strokes, how they would transition mining activities to a water storage project. I heard strongly from the local community the meaningfulness of the jobs to them that this would bring. To us, 100 to 140 jobs doesn't seem like a big number. To that community, it is. I think we need to acknowledge that. I also heard from the environmental groups, almost all of whom I respect deeply, and who have been and will continue to be great partners in our mission for Everglades restoration. Their comments ranged from pretty cautious on the project to outright against it. And I think we've heard, thank you guys again for coming today, you continuing to, it's very possible we might not be at this stage were you not so forceful. But in the interest of, emotions getting high and people getting, and feeling like they might be getting backed into a corner, I want to just suggest a few things. Everybody here in this room has a lot of personal time, passion. The state, the country has a lot invested in these projects, these SERP projects. The EAA Reservoir is an anchor project for us, we all know. And this district, I'm confident in saying, even though I can't speak for everybody, is not going to sit quietly to let a project go through that has any potential risk of damaging that project. We need to, I think right now we have an 18-page document to study. We need a lot more information. And I agree with you that this process has been a little bit convoluted in terms of the various participants and votes and everything. So at least from our side, which we can control, I think I would ask that you guys allow us to do our process. We have a lot to analyze. We have, I think, the best people to help us analyze that. And let's be open-minded. Let's look at the details. Let's not knee-jerk this, although I understand people's positions and passions. So let me just pose a few questions. On the basis that this project does not endanger any SERP projects or projects that we've invested in to support our mission, everybody's mission, in terms of Everglades restoration, on the basis that there are no negative aquifer impacts or factors like that, what if this project could remain, or if this area could remain cane fields that need to be watered and fertilized, would you rather have that than a potential water storage project? If this project included water quality treatment, that was a natural vegetation element, an STA or an FEB, would that make it better? Don't we all agree that we need more water storage and water treatment? I think we do. I know it has to be planned properly. From an economic and cost perspective, that is just as important. We can't put the burden on taxpayers. We need to mitigate that as much as possible. We can't add more projects that have any risk of pulling funding from SERP projects, right? So how's that going to be handled? How about, guys, if there's a way, this is a for-profit project. What if there's a bank? What if there's a trust fund where some of the profits, a portion of those profits, are set aside for future use to cover the ongoing operations and management so that it doesn't task our budgets, the district's budgets, significantly? These are all questions that I don't think people are considering or allowing to be addressed before they make up their mind. So I know things seem like they're going quickly, and they might be going quickly from a Palm Beach County perspective. But what I want to convey is that from my perspective, and I think from this board's perspective and the staff's perspective, we're going to continue doing our job. We're going to have a transparent process. I absolutely agree that we now need to sort of, recap and see how can we do this better to prevent these emotions. But I think that, let the staff do their job. And this, in fact, I hope people can consider that this might be a beneficial project that supports all of our mission to promote Everglades restoration. Thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Stanley. Mr. Bergeron.
Well, first of all, as always, I want to thank our staff for everything they do. We should be very proud. We've got the best people working with us. And I want to thank all the stakeholders. it's so important, you know, we're public servants, we're up here, and it's just so wonderful to see the passion, to see the, and they're all here for a purpose, to make sure as we go into the future, there's a quality of life in Florida. I want to talk a little bit about the Blue Shanty and what's going on down at the Tamiami Trail, mainly for the new board members that hasn't been here. Y'all have heard me speak so much about the Tamiami Trail and getting the benefits of projects that we started 25 years ago, getting those benefits. And the last two projects of moving water south, and that's all I've ever heard for 25 years. The goal of moving water south has a lot to do with the Blue Shanty that allows the eastern part of Shark River Slough, as per our science, about 1,500,000 acre feet. The western side, I want to thank our federal partners, the Corps and U.S. Fish and Wildlife and the Park Service for working with our staff. We have meetings every 2 months as we progress to remove the barriers that are not letting water flow under $1 billion worth of infrastructure that started 25 years ago. And that deals with the airboat concessionaires that the Park Service is working on. It deals with U.S. Fish and Wildlife on the condition-based operation of the S-12s and the 343A and B that will be on a condition base, not a time certain base, that allows the 1 million acre feet on the western side of Shark River Slough delivered to Lossman Slough and the 10,000 Islands. We're on the verge of the biggest benefit to match the inflows of about 8,000 cubic feet per second with the outflows. Without a cumulative backup in the Central Everglades that's affecting not only the Miccosukes and their reservation, but affecting our public lands in the Big Cypress and Fakahatchee and Picayune and the Panther Refuge, 4 million acres, including Everglades National Park, in equalizing these water levels with shared adversity and shared impact through a global system. Now, we've spent billions of dollars, and we're right on that verge. And Drew, I want to ask the question with the next Everglades Task Force, which I'm very honored to sit on, and how can we approve from our board and recommend, and I wouldn't say prioritize, because every project's important, but to accelerate the Blue Shanty, that last piece that allows this water to flow south. Can we get board approval to recommend this to the task force?
I don't see why not. I mean, I think it's, as you know, we are expediting everything in CERP, right? And so to expedite the Blue Shanty is a constant message, and uncorking of Tamiami Trail is a constant message, right? And so if you, as a board, you know, can just give me general board direction to say, hey, let's make sure the task force knows that we, as a water management district, want to expedite the Blue Shanty flowway. That's a message that I can deliver on behalf of the board or the district, deliver very easily.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we need to do that. And then how are we doing on the western side? I know west of the L28, we're proceeding. Colonel Reynolds, maybe you can update the board with how we're proceeding on modeling the Tamiami Trail and Loop Road. And I know where the 3 culverts that are going in that moves water naturally by gravity, but in order to get it beyond the Tamiami Trail. I know y'all are working hard on that.
We are. Lucenay's team is working on the modeling as well as the design, and so we are in the part of the process where we are taking the modeling results and working on actual designs, and that's in collaboration with the Corps and with the Department of Transportation, as well as the resource agencies with FWC and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And so the whole team is collaborating on how we do this and make sure that we get it right. And so we're looking forward to being able to bring some contracts to you in '26 so that we can get started on those efforts in construction.
Okay, well, thank you for that, because that'll allow 1 million acre-feet to flow by gravity. Extremely important, and stop the cumulative backups in the central, stops seagrass from dying in Florida Bay, and the whole 4 million acres of state and federal will have the biggest benefit we've seen in 25 years, and thank you for that. I want to also talk about this dry season we went through, and I touched on it at our last meeting. You know, it brought concerns on water supply, but I do want to point out, and I'll be brief, but it really was a huge benefit to Lake Okeechobee, a huge benefit to the Central Everglades and the Big Cypress and Everglades National Park to have a dry season. You can't have a healthy wetland without a dry season and a wet season. So we had huge benefits for the environment. And now this rock pit, I think there's a lot of work that's got to be done by our staff. We have a great deal of concern through the public, as you had mentioned, Mr. Chairman, and I think there's an awful lot that has to be looked at. And first of all, with a rock pit, is it a benefit to Everglades restoration? Is it a negative to Everglades restoration? Now, understanding when you fracture the ground and you mine a certain depth, can you hold water in the reservoir due to hydrostatic pressure and seepage, dealing with the geology of soil versus a reservoir from the top of the surface upward? And there's got to be, so it's understood that there's no damage to billions of dollars of infrastructure we're building all around this. It's extremely important. I can understand why the public is so concerned, and I think it's important that if it is a benefit, it's a benefit, and if it's a negative, it's a negative. I'm a little disappointed that the process didn't come to us first to analyze all of this, but we are where we are, and we have a fiduciary duty and a responsibility, and we've always done that here at this board. Not saying other boards hadn't. A responsibility to be very transparent with the public. There's like a revolution going on, and people don't understand it, and our staff is very capable of analyzing the pluses and the minuses of what's going on here, where we can be transparent with the public. So I'm excited about us getting into that. And Drew, I don't know, that takes a year, 2 years. There's an awful lot to do to analyze this. What kind of time frame do you think it takes staff to look at this project in detail in regards to pluses or minuses?
So we don't have all the information, so I don't know what kind of information exists to review. I know, generally speaking, that when we develop any project, it takes a while to get all the science right and the engineering right and everything. And you've talked. How long have you talked about the culverts under 41, right?
Yeah.
So it takes a little while. So I don't know how long this is gonna take, but if it takes a year or more, it wouldn't surprise me.
Well, I would hope that all of our federal and state partners that are a part of this whole decision will give us the opportunity and the time to analyze whether it's a benefit or a negative to Everglades restoration. And with that, and thank you for allowing me, I think for the first time, Mr. Chairman, you out-talked me for one time, but.
Hell is getting colder.
Yeah. Very dangerous to give a redneck alligator wrestler a microphone, but thank you for letting me be a little long-winded here, because I want the public to know we're going to be very transparent to the public as we go through this process, and making sure that Everglades restoration is the #1 priority here. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Bergeron. Mr. Spotswood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, would like to thank you and fellow board member Steinel for making comments you did. Won't go back in depth, but I think it's pretty clear based on that and the comments we got from Executive Director Bartlett that we will be looking at this and going through the process. Going back to Mr. Bergeron's comments about the Blue Shanty, for those of you that don't know me, I'm from Key West. There's a whole lot of water between the southern part of the Everglades and Key West, and that 1 million acre foot is important to us. And from what I've been able to see and learn, that water's clean. It'd be good water to move into Florida Bay and move down south. And we've got a lot of issues with habitat loss, from sponges to corals and others, and so would like to reiterate the comments there to try and push that one forward if possible. My last comment here would be going back to Mr. Martin's public comment. I would like to just ask, with a little bit of time we have left, are there any projects that we can jump in and work on inside of the lake, whether that's burning or other? I got the chance a couple weeks ago to go out on the lake with Scott and see some of this. It really is an incredible resource. We caught a lot of bass, had a great day, and learned a lot about what's going on out there, and can see some opportunities, but I know we're short on time, so we'd just ask if there's an opportunity to jump in and do anything, whether it's burning or other. Let's see if we can bring some help there.
Thanks, Mr. Spotswood. Colonel Roman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to start by saying that I appreciate your comments and Mr. Steinley's comments and the excellent report on the public meeting that was conducted by staff. I think that was the first step in the process to get some of the public comment on record. I have a question, Drew. I don't know if you can answer this, but there was a comment made about a DEP permit. Can you clarify whether or not that was an intent for a permit or a permit? Or Jen?
It was a notice of intent to issue a permit.
So it was a notice of intent to issue a permit? Yes. Which is very different. Okay, so thank you for that. I think one of the challenges, just to add one thing to the discussion, is that we're talking about a project that's going to have impact, what is being stated, 30 or 40 years down the road. And I think that's always challenging to wrap your arms around when it'll be long after I'm gone, right? That this is going to be a part of the landscape if it's going to come about. So that's all I'll say, because you all said it so well, and I appreciate those comments. I would like to highlight the Northern Everglades Estuaries program. There was a great update in our packet today, and I want to thank the interagency partners for updating all of that information. And I think that it would be very, very positive to maybe have a special, whether it's an agenda item or I don't know if we need a workshop, but I had this discussion with staff about the Northern Everglades planning project to see if we couldn't get some more detailed information. And also, I know we're making incredible progress, and it's just hard to quantify what progress that we're making. So I've asked them to do that as well. So maybe that can come back to us and we could highlight it.
I'll ask Lawrence to come down and give us an update.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he probably liked coming back down to South Florida. The other highlight is I met with staff, and we were going over LACO procedures and the lake management plan, and I was getting an update on our project in Lake Okeechobee. You might remember the turbidity curtain, one of our projects that we have there. And so I met with staff yesterday and our scientists to go over what they're seeing. I think that in having those discussions, that there is a positive result that could occur if we had some type of lake management plan group. I don't know what that looks like, right? And I see the Corps in the audience. I don't know, but we've got FWC who provided me a copy of the lake management plan, and I was looking at their goals and objectives. I go out with various stakeholders, and they talk about the lake. We know that the Corps is the lead on the lake levels, and a lot of people have questions about the lake and what's happening on the lake, and I asked the staff, is there a forum where everybody comes together? And I was relating that from what I understand on the West Coast, right? We've got Lake Trafford in the Big Cypress Basin, and we have a lake management plan, and we have a lake management group that comes together and to discuss all those things. So I don't know, I'd leave it out there, but I think that there might be a positive benefit if we could make some type of working group that could handle all these comments on the lake and kind of focus them. But I'll leave that to you, Drew, and the smart guys, because I know that the district doesn't have the lead on it. Maybe with the Corps of Engineers, FWC, maybe we could put something together. But it's very, very interesting what we're seeing with the turbidity curtain. And if you remember, board members, I was wanting to put those concrete cones down there in Coot Bay and make an area where we could put maybe an artificial reef and slow down the wave action and get the SAV growing. And Mr. Martin didn't mention it today in his public comments, but I've reached out to him and Commissioner Iglesias to ask what they're seeing down in Coot Bay now that the lake levels are low. And hopefully he'll have some feedback in that regard. And that, I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel Roman. Mr. Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To begin with, Chair, Mr. Steinley, the board members appreciate all the comments on Southland. Chair, I think you were spot on your comments, and I appreciate your input there. Appreciate y'all staying engaged, and appreciate everybody that showed up to offer the concerns, get them on the record. Staff is listening, and staff will be taking everything into consideration. So appreciate that. Mr. Martin referenced in his comments LACO recovery, and it is, you know, the Corps has announced that recovery operations have ended officially. No more operations will happen. Recovery is still happening. We're still below 11.5 and still below 12 foot for so many days. It looks like we're going to hit those metrics unless we hit a freak storm. John, that's up your alley to prevent that freak storm from coming. But as a reminder, as we went through the LOSOM process, and I kind of go on this for the new board members as a reminder, that was a no-win situation. You had these spider graphs that the Corps came up with, radar graphs that going to the outside was more beneficial, coming to the inside I think was less beneficial for all these different metrics: water supply, navigation, lake health, and estuary discharges, east, west, and all that. And as they ran these different models, and this radar would expand and contract. But it never, you always had one finger that was sticking in the old plant, there inside the old plant. So you just, and I had this little pop-it ball. I keep this pop-it ball up here, and it's a reminder, you can never push every little button on this pop-it ball in. So I'll bring it back to the recovery discussion. There was, for me personally, as we entered the recovery mode, I personally found myself, I got zeroed in on getting that lake down to 12 foot, getting it down to 11 and a half. And I get reminded from a presentation earlier this week. It's a local engagement call that the Corps leads, District Help does on a lot of things. But, and John, I'm sure we'll see it during your presentation today. But now as we look at the projection for the lake going forward for the next few months, we're going to be skirting that water shortage management ban. And so I just remind us that while it looks like we've had successful Lakeville recovery, we still have other issues. And it's just, I think it's just a constant reminder we got to keep remembering it is a delicate balance. And John, I don't think you and your team get paid enough. Drew, you and your team, and John, get paid enough for making the recommendations that you have to make. And again, you're just using the best science, best available stuff. But I appreciate the work that y'all are doing. Hopefully hoping for a moderate ascension so we can see that SAV growth. I have been engaged with staff. It's always one of the tools that are in our toolbox in managing these lakes, as Colonel Roman referenced, the FWC Lake Management Plan, is herbicides. And so I've been engaged with staff, just making sure that we're dotting the I's, crossing the T's in herbicide usage, making sure we're not doing anything to adversely affect the submerged vegetation coming back. Now, as a reminder to everybody, we've got floating vegetation that has to be controlled, and FWC does that on the lake. And if that floating vegetation is allowed to come back, it shades out the submerged vegetation, and it won't come back. So there's a delicate balance that FWC is making on the lake. There's no clear-cut, easy things to do that doesn't affect something else. And I'm just appreciative to not only our agency, but the other agencies that are truly working to give us the best outcome. Again, it's not going to be perfect because the system is rigged against us. So, but I am excited about that. He's been referenced a time or two. I got to have a little discussion with the new director for environmental assessment and restoration at DEP. He called, Lawrence called, Lawrence checked in, no, he is excited, and boy, he's excited about the BMAP. And Mark, there you go. He's, Lawrence is working on it. And so that I think we've got some great things to come, and it's great to have a friend in that position. And somebody comes from South Florida and understands us. He is actively, of course, he's drinking from the fire hose, learning about the springs. But Drew, you're well aware of that. So anyways, no, that was a great discussion. I mentioned it earlier, and Colonel Roman brought up and somebody else brought up it'd be nice to have a LACO management type call. New board members, I mean, one of the things, if you're interested in learning more about the system, shoot, there are meetings that are happening every day of the week. Some type of meeting that you can tune in, the Corps is hosting, the district is hosting, or some other agency. And the Corps leads this local engagement meeting for the CNSF system. Now looking at once a month. It used to be kind of was bi-weekly here. I'm looking at Ava here to correct me as we go here, but I encourage you to tune into that one. It's another way to learn more about the system, learn more what's happening, actually hear the local government stakeholders, get to put their input in on some of the management, what they're seeing, boots on the ground, and that we don't necessarily always get to hear in public comment here. So I encourage you to get with staff if you're interested and get the link and tune into that. Now it appears to be it'll be once a month. So that's my comments, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Mr. Butler. Mr. Hurley.
Yeah, thank you. To echo Mr. Butler's comments, I really appreciate your comments and Mr. Stenneal's comments about the about Southland and the need to really digest a very complex set of information. And I hope that staff will keep us, as you learn things and you do your analysis, that we're kept really up to speed, because it's probably going to be quite a dynamic set of factors that you're considering. Being the new guy, I am deeply jealous of all of your experience sitting up here. It's an interesting process to only get to see you and hear from you when we're sitting up here. So I will take Mr. Butler's advice to heart and really try to get out in the district as much as possible, because I'm still drinking from the fire hose. I appreciate staff's continued efforts in trying to help me bring me up to speed, and so I'm looking forward to becoming a more useful member of this board. Thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Hurley. Vice Chair Wagner.
Yes, thank you. I just want to make a brief comment. I mean, one of the things I'd like to say is that I thoroughly and completely trust our board and the staff at the district, and I know that this reservoir rock mining operation in Southland has caused quite a stir amongst many of our stakeholders, which I take to heart, and I believe all need to be listened to. The reality is that I don't think anything's being pulled on us. We still have a say in this. There's a process in place. Ultimately, it's going to come to us. We're going to make an analysis, and the reality is that I think we take every stakeholder's comments to heart. We drill down on them. I think every board member is going to dig in on this for sure. It's certainly on the radar screen. And ask the tough questions that need to be asked of staff and other stakeholders, and do our job and effectively go through the process of evaluating what was supposed to be effectively a turnkey operation for us, and see whether or not this is something that's beneficial, or whether there are detriments to it that are so great that it tilts the scales in the other direction. But I know that Drew and the rest of the staff are on top of this. I know that we're going to do a thorough analysis, and I know we'll have an opportunity to weigh in. And to me, that's the most important thing. I think that this process is a new type of process, something we envisioned as a potential opportunity to engage in these public-private partnerships, and to have people step up and to frankly invest a lot of money up front before we came out of pocket at all, and present to us something they thought would be beneficial. Now, is it going to be that way? I don't know. But I'm confident that we all are in a position to do the analysis that we need to do, that staff's in a position to do the analysis that it needs to do, and that we'll be engaged and able to educate and make an analysis, and ultimately each one of us make a decision on how this thing plays out. And so I know that there's a lot of people who have concern, and maybe their concerns are totally well-founded. Maybe some of them are and some of them aren't. But I'm confident in the process. I'm confident that, we're all engaged on this. And obviously it's a hot button topic right now. But, it's going to play out, and ultimately, we'll weigh in. And so I'm happy that everybody's engaged. Obviously, the decision's not been made yet, but it's on everybody's radar screens, and we're going to, do our job, which is to fairly evaluate a project that could provide great benefits. It could also have issues. And so, I don't think this is going to slip anybody's, slip under the radar, so to speak. We're all on top of it. I trust everyone on this board to do, and I know they will, a fair analysis of this. And so that's where we are. But, we've heard everybody, I think, loud and clear. I don't think it's going to get any quieter, but that's a good thing. And, we've got stakeholders who care about our system and how it works and whether it will work and whether we're going down a path we should go down or whether we're going down a path we shouldn't go down. But at the end of the day, this is going to come before us, and, we'll have an opportunity to do a full analysis, and, I'm looking forward to it. So thank you.
Thanks, Vice Chair, very much, and I share in your confidence. Mr. Bartlett?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. As we were having this conversation, it did occur to me that there are things that this board may not know about what we were trying to do with this project, but it is very much in the public record, and we've been giving public records requests and responding to them this whole time. So when we were contemplating whether to take on the review of this project, and for 2 months this summer, we had it drafted to get on the board agenda so that you guys could make the decision to decide whether to take it on for review or not, right? And so we already had the idea to bring you in for that very initial decision. Do we want to review this or not? Unfortunately, Phillips and Jordan withdrew the project at that same time, so there was nothing to take to the board. And so we did certainly have an interest in having you guys make that decision versus staff making the decision. Time goes on, whatever changes, suddenly at the end of the year, there's a great urgency from Phillips and Jordan to get an answer from us as to whether we would take it on or not. So I had to make an executive decision. And I had a sense that the board would want to evaluate this project, right, as we were getting it ready for the agenda. So I went ahead and made that executive decision and sent a letter to Phillips and Jordan, not the county, to Phillips and Jordan saying we would take it on, and said what we knew about whether it would work or not and all the evaluation we had to do and exactly where we were in the process, which is just the beginning. So the letter speaks for itself. But I just wanted you to know that we did have the intention of bringing it to you to decide whether to bring it in early on. And so I just wanted to put that on the record. I also want to put on the record, because it's all in the record, the Phillips and Jordan, Matt Aitson did send me a draft letter to send them that they were interested in sending. I've been in public service way too long to know whether I take that as a draft, right? I was like, it's very good information. I set it aside. Whatever letter we crafted from scratch, right? With staff involvement to craft that letter from scratch to say what we thought and what we believed. So that's basically the history of it. And I just wanted to put that on the record. As we sit here right now, there is so much that this staff at the Water Management District needs to accomplish. We're very excited about bringing the 3 contracts for CERP to you today. And I have been in this public service sphere when I was at DEP and EPA, and we got to keep our eye on the ball with Northern Everglades protection, with CERP, with all the stuff we're doing to accomplish what the governor has tasked us to accomplish through his executive orders. And so not only am I saying that for myself as a reminder, but for the board and staff as a reminder, is we're going to do a review of the Southland project, and it's going to be an outstanding review, a comprehensive review. But at the same time, it is not going to be a distraction for us. We are going to keep our eye on the ball and keep moving all the rest of the projects moving forward as the governor directed us to do. So just wanted to close that out and put some things on the record for you, sir, and thank you for the time.
Thanks, Mr. Bartlett. Appreciate it.
I have one other comment.
Mr. Bergeron.
Try to make it brief, but when we're talking about storage into the future, I think it's important that we analyze, and under the savings clause of our waters, agriculture, water supply to the citizens of South Florida and the Everglades, It's a shared resource. So as you look at South Florida, and you look at the water supply needs, and you look, for instance, like the Tri-County area, where we have somewhere around 7 million people, water storage and projects into the future is for the economics and the benefit of economical growth and jobs, is the storage being in the right geographical location as well. For instance, Dade County in particular, with the population, storage there is much more economical. I know we got the Palm Beach aggregate storage that certain counties are benefiting from that storage. So as we go forward, we want to be in the most economical area for future storage to be able to comply with the savings clause and agriculture, water supply, and the quantity of water that's compatible with the environment, all the way from Orlando to Florida Bay. Key West, excuse me. Sorry about that. So, yeah. Thank you for reminding that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Mr. Bergeron. I am certain staff will keep that in mind. And Mr. Bartlett, thank you for your comments also. We're going to move now to consent agenda. Is there any board member who wants to move any items from the consent to discussion? If not, we'll go to public comment on consent. Is there any public comment on consent?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll start with Anthony DeJulian. Mr. DeJulian submitted a public comment card during the previous public comment session, and it was missed inadvertently. Mr. DeJulian.
Thank you very much for that, and I appreciate the fact that you saw that you had missed my card and that you're giving me the opportunity to speak. My name's Anthony DeJulian. I've lived in South Florida for 42 years. I'm a recognized expert in the saltwater fishing, conservation, and fishing community. I would like to say thank you to Mr. Bergeron. I know him personally from the fishing industry, and I know that he sincerely supports and appreciates the recreational fishing industry and boating industry. And I want to thank you for your comments that you made, Mr. Bergeron, today. I feel confident with you on the board that that's a good thing for us. My biggest concerns are that this project, the Southland Mine project, could have some very, very severe and negative impacts on the current projects, especially the EAA reservoir, with all the blasting, the amount of time that they're proposing that this is going to go on for, up to 30 years. I just have done enough research. I've been involved with the fight for Everglades restoration long enough to know that this is it just smells fishy. It's just not, the whole way this has been presented from the beginning has been just not in a sincere way to us, the general public, especially to us who are stakeholders, whose businesses and whose livelihoods rely on clean water and on Everglades restoration. We know throughout history that Big Sugar especially has done everything they can to delay or stop Everglades restoration, all in the name of profits. And the same has happened here with this particular instance with the rock mine. You know, going back to Bill 2508 that Governor DeSantis got rid of, thankfully, we as the community have been disrespected quite a great deal from our politicians and our community leaders. We've been looked right into our eyes and lied to. We've been constantly gaslit, telling us that we don't know what we're talking about, and if we read really carefully, things are a benefit to us. And every single time, because we are intelligent and we do know what we're talking about, we have actually won those opinions. And it turns out we do know what we're talking about. So I would just say to please recognize the people who are here today and who have been at these meetings speaking. We're not just coming in here. We're not paid to be here. We are here because we love the state of Florida, and we are extremely concerned about the future of everything from our drinking water to the water that we recreate in. And this project is not a good idea in the way it's been presented for Everglades restoration or for the general health of our water and our industries that rely on clean water to make a living here in the state of Florida. So I would just ask you in closing to please listen to your constituents, listen to the people of Florida. I know.
Please wrap up your comments.
If you have been paying attention, which I'm sure you have, you know that at this point in the state of Florida especially and across the country, the citizens are sick and tired of our natural resources being destroyed. We're not going to take it anymore. It's become such an issue that it's not a Republican or a Democrat issue anymore. It's a bipartisan thing, and we the people are not going to stand by any longer and let it happen. So please do the right thing, be on the right side of history, and let's make sure that this mine never gets off the ground. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. DeJulian. We'll hear next from Richard Smith, followed by Mark Perry.
Thank you, Board, for this time. I'm getting a little better. We've been doing this over 2 years now, so I'm not quite as scared as I was the first time. But I basically just want to thank the Board, give me this time to thank you guys, Miss Jennifer, Ray Palmer, Drew, everybody that's been involved in item number 15, this exchange. I think it's going to really help everybody involved tie your stuff together, tie us to our stuff together. But listen, your staff, they're second to none anywhere. They are absolutely great. Again, thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. We'll hear next from Mark Perry.
Good morning again, Governing Board. Just item 19 is works of the district, and it's kind of surprising me. I didn't know that they weren't already works of the district, but you know, I mean, you look at the number of those items, and these are projects and programs and things that we've been talking about and doing and under construction, and they're working, and it just is amazing to me that we have to officially kind of designate them as works of the district. But that takes on that kind of responsibility, I think, and that responsibility that this district has because they are works of the district, and we treat them like they're basically waters of the state. We need to, you know, make sure we issue permits. In the EAA particularly, you issue Everglades works of the district permits, and those permits are actually anyone in the EAA discharging from their 289 structures into works of the district have to get permits to do that. And you authorize those permits and you regulate that. And I think that's what you're going to be doing with all of these projects and programs. So thank you for officially taking on that responsibility as works of the district, as we all talk about for these projects going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. Moving over to our virtual participants, we'll hear from Robert Volpe. Mr. Volpe, please unmute your mic.
Good morning. Thank you. Robert Volpe with the law firm of Holtzman Vogel on behalf of Jungle Herbs LLC related to item 15. I just wanted to take a second to thank you again. We spoke a while ago when you adopted the Green Heart of the Everglades project, and your staff has had the vision and cooperation to work with us on this exchange agreement, which furthers that project. They've done an excellent job. Mr. Bartlett, your staff is wonderful to work with, and we thank you for allowing us to work with you.
Thank you, Mr. Volpe. Mr. Chairman, we have no additional public comment.
Thanks. We'll go now to board members. A consent agenda, just so you know, item 15 requires a 2/3 majority vote. Is there a motion to move consent forward?
So moved.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion on consent?
Mr. Chair, I have one comment that I'd like to make on consent, and it's in reference to item 20. As the board reviewed this item, you realize this is for our microwave equipment for our new tower that would also include equipment for the C-43 reservoir and the FACA Union and also the BCB communications tower. And I just want to give a shout out to staff, the procurement staff, and also Akin Awashina and his staff that were so ready and prepared to actually issue this contract that they were able to realize cost savings of $1 million. So I just wanted to say thank you for moving this forward. Thank you for your hard work, and that's just great teamwork for us to be able to realize that savings. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much for pointing that out. We're going to go ahead and call the question on consent, and I'll start to my left with Mr. Hurley.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Butler.
Yes.
Colonel Norman?
Yes.
I'm going to vote yes. Mr. Steinle?
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron?
Yes.
Mr. Spotswood?
Yes.
Vice Chair Wagner?
Yes.
Thank you very much. That passes unanimously. We'll go now to discussion with the Central Everglades Planning Project update. And Lucinette, you've got a bunch of stuff.
Let's see, it's still morning, so good morning, Mr. Chair and fellow board members. I had to check my watch. I'm going to provide an update on the Central Everglades Planning Project, known as CEPP, and I have 3 resolutions for your consideration today. Two of the construction contracts are part of CEPP, Everglades Agricultural Area Phase of CEPP, and one for CEPP South. So this graphic shows you the breakdown of CEPP into 4 phases, and CEPP's overarching goal is to improve quantity, quality, timing, and distribution to help us restore the natural flow from Lake O through the Everglades and south into the Everglades National Park and sloughs in Florida Bay. So from north to south, the EAA improves conveyance, storage, and treatment capacities by improving the North New River by 200 CFS. This construction contract is already, it's in motion and will be complete by early 2026. It also includes improving 1,000 CFS additional capacity here in the Miami Canal. It includes storage in the EAA A2 reservoir and the A2 STA, which is basically complete. And then moving into the CEPP North phase, what this does is helps us move additional water from east to west through structural improvements, new structures, structure improvements, canal improvements, backfilling the Miami Canal, getting that water across to that northwest corner of 3A where there's higher topography, and being able to sheet flow across 3A. So then moving down into CEPP South also includes new structures on the L67A. It includes a new structure, divide structure here, that's for consideration today, the 355 West, new levee and degrade of levees, et cetera, within this area, backfilling of this levee canal system to help move that water south. It also includes CEPP New Water, and we're complete with CEPP New Water, which is amazing. We built 5 miles of seepage barrier, and what this does is allows us to raise the elevation of the water within Everglades National Park without damaging, without seepage damaging areas to the east. And it's working. We've seen it work. It's pretty amazing. So in this graphic, I've never explained that the solid lines here mean that we're doing improvements within the canal prisms. And then when you see dashed lines, that means we're expanding the canals. So that's the difference. So Miami Canal here in this phase 2 will be expansion, but within our rights of way. So I just wanted to describe that. Here's a map of CEPP EAA that you've seen in the past. So the North New River here again, bringing 200 CFS from the east into the inflow-outflow canal. In addition, 1,000 CFS coming south on the Miami Canal and flowing in this way. And you know that the SDA reservoir is complete. let's see, the North package today for Miami Canal, we will be discussing includes improvements within, is up for consideration today, and the South package will be for future year budgets consideration, but that design is complete. So in addition, the core is in construction. We completed our inflow-outflow canal as part of the STA work, and then the core is almost complete with their inflow-outflow canal. And previously, you approved a resolution for us to award money to DOT to build this connection here to the North New River Canal, as well as build the overpass that allows that water to flow. So about 3,000 CFS taking that turn from coming south and then going west. So they are currently in procurement, in the procurement phase of that, so that's exciting. The Corps is also in contract and in construction with the embankment and the foundation preparation contracts. The foundation prep contract prepares the foundation as well as the seepage wall, so it's everything at ground level and then underground. The embankment contract does everything above, includes all the water control structures. The pump station, the main inflow pump station will be constructed by the district. We will be coming to you later this year with a tower project that's part of the pump station, and then moving out in a later year to tie in that pump station contract construction with the timing of the reservoir so that we don't have a pump station sitting idle, unable to be tested. So, and then a future contract the Corps has is the seepage pump station here. But almost everything is out in construction. We have an additional project for consideration today is the G372 pump station. It is a flood control pump station that pulls water south on the Miami Canal and then delivers water to the east to the STA 3-4 inflow canal, and I'll speak more about that in a minute. So this pump station, like I said, moves water from the Miami Canal, but had seepage pumps, 3 75 CFS seepage pumps that pulled water in from the seepage canal that existed previously. It pulled it in from the north and then pushed it back out the inflow-outflow canal. But we built an STA, and that STA backfilled that seepage canal as part of the southern cell, cell 3. So we, through a post-authorization change report, we repurposed, we designed by repurposing these seepage pumps, we're going to demolish the existing flow directional vanes and walkway, construction of a reinforced cast-in-place concrete structural frame, and opening in the south wall here. We are installing fall protection for this new design, as well as replacement of existing voltage soft starters and cabinets. So that water will come in from the Miami Canal into this pump bay and then back out into the STA 3-4 inflow canal. So why would we do this? You have existing infrastructure in place. Why not use these electric low flow pumps when we don't need large diesel pumps to push that much water? You're going to get the benefits when you need them. You can remotely operate them and move water as needed to keep our STAs hydrated. So this construction contract is 754 days from notice to proceed. The next construction contract for your consideration today will be the Miami Canal Phase 1. As I mentioned, Phase 1 is within its canal boundaries from Laco south to this point, and then Phase 2 expands within the rights of way, expands. It needs to be deeper, wider, et cetera, to get that flow to the south. So this is Phase 1 turned on its side with north to the left. Very hard to show 6.2 miles on the presentation. So we're basically excavating through mechanical means and then also hydraulically dredging. It's over 3 segments. So Laco here to the left in 3 separate segments. We're taking that excess fill, either using it to improve the canal levees and berms, or we're hydraulically pushing that material to this dredge material management area. We recently did real estate actions to put this in our ownership so that we can use this property called the Lake Harbor Tract. So this is a 990-day contract from notice to proceed. I wanted to provide an update on the North New River that I mentioned that's in construction. We had a notice to proceed last year, June 2024, with final completion in April of 2026. To speed up and stay on track, hydraulic dredging has moved to 24 hours, 6 days per week operation, and mechanical excavation is ongoing. Here's a picture in segment 1 of the hydraulic dredge. And then on the right here is, on a barge, is a grinder that actually is grinding the rock off the canal slope that can then be hydraulically dredged. And that material gets piped all the way to the A2. We have a dredge material management area there that was constructed for us, or by Ryan. So this is about 10.6 miles of work broken down into 3 segments. So moving on to CEPP North. Again, this helps move water, approximately a total of 3,000 CFS, essentially trying to move that water slowly to the west. We are almost complete with the S620 structure. So back in at the February board and March boards, you approved the S8 contract, repurposing the S8 to be able to, instead of moving over 4,000 CFS down this Miami Canal, we are now moving 3,000 CFS to the west through this. This will be a new connection, improvements to the L4, improvements to the L5 on the order of 3,000 CFS, so much greater than what they can move now. You also approved the L5 remnant canal, this piece here. So that was in February, and then in March you approved this brand new structure here, S622, which is a divide structure. So the additional features here that you see from L4 down to the L5, all of this is in design in various phases. And we're working with the Corps and our stakeholders to walk through those features and make sure that we are designing what is intended. So moving on to CEPP South. Purpose of CEPP South is to connect water from the 3A down into Everglades National Park and then hydrate Shark River and Taylor Sloughs. The district moved out early to in earlier years to increase the capacity here at S333. So we added an 1,150 CFS structure adjacent to 333. We degraded the old Tamiami Trail to help with sheet flow and remove that barrier. So what's going on right now? We have features under construction. The Corps is building along the L67A, the 631, 632, and 633. These culverts will allow more instead of directed flow at this corner, we spread out this flow along this levee to be able to come from the north and then move water south through this area. So we don't dry out areas in here. So what we're moving forward with, back in December, you approved for us to take over the S355 West spillway structure. It was in final design with the Corps. We took that work on. That's a 1,200 CFS structure here. That's in the L29 as a divide. And that allows us to, these additional features here from the L67 D is the Blue Shanty flowway. So that'll allow us to tie that back in, degrade this levee, degrade the L29, degrade and backfill this levee. And so for the future, this flow will come through here and then south. So having said that, the Corps is pretty close with their S356 pump station and S334 east structure, which moves water from the east to the west. It's a seepage pump station. So that is moving forward. And then the additional features here are in design, currently at intermediate. So the contract up for discussion today, it includes 1,200 CFS remotely operated double gated concrete spillway, includes retaining walls, sheet pile wall here, and then a bridge crossing that will allow public access, and a right turn lane off of US 41 to make it safe to get to the structure, as well as safe for the public. So it will be used as an access point for Tiger Tail community and other future recreational access features and moving forward. This construction contract is approximately 1,030 days from notice to proceed. And just wanted to show you a timeline because we think it's pretty amazing. It was a big effort, I'll say Herculean effort, to make this happen. It's very hard to take over someone else's design. You have to change out the title blocks. You have to change out some of your specs to match your way of construction and your procurement processes. So at task force in December, we announced that we were going to do this. We came back to you at governing board and requested to move forward with a project partnership amendment to take this work over. You approved that. So within a week of that approval, we kicked off a work order for the design. We kicked off discussions with DOT about the turn lane issues that we needed to incorporate back into the design. Those were some of the pinch points, as well as the DOT agreements and easements. We also, within that same week, applied for the DEP and the Corps permits because now it was in our court. And we did submit a PPA amendment letter to the Corps requesting that we take this over. So all of that happened within the first week. Of course, there's pre-planning involved in that. It doesn't just happen that quickly, but we were working hard to make this happen. And this is an important structure in unlocking the Blue Shanty Flowway and making sure that we can move forward in a timely manner. So we went out to bid in April, opened bids last week, quick turnaround, and we're hoping for the PPA amendment execution by the end of July, which will line up with the timing of us signing the contract and giving notice to proceed. So what does this do? Why is this important, right? We were able to pull this ahead by 1.5 years on the integrated delivery schedule, and that's why we moved forward with this. And it's important to the district and the state that this happens, as well as the federal government. And to show you why CEPP is important, you can see these are since 2002 to 2021, and then 2022 to 2025. You can see with the structural changes that we're making, as well as operational changes, that we're making an improvement. Anything in blue means more water and more hydrated. And so you can see that Taylor Slough, or Shark River Slough, as well as Taylor Slough, are starting to look pretty good. And the more we do, the better this is going to get. And with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Congratulations and thank you. Do we have a public comment on this?
We do, Mr. Chairman. We'll begin with Caitlin Newcamp, followed by Mark Perry.
Good morning. It's still morning. Governing board members, thank you for the opportunity to comment. Thank you, Listené, for the informative presentation. Caitlin Newcamp with Audubon, Florida. We just want to say that we strongly support the continued progress of CEPP, particularly these 3 contracts that are ahead of you today. These projects are vital elements of CERP, repurposing the G372 pumps to provide environmentally sensitive, low-flow pumping into STA 3.4, aligns with our shared goal of improving water quality while preserving natural hydrologic conditions. The Miami Canal improvements will increase water flow capacity from Lake O to the EAA reservoir, enhancing water storage, timing, and distribution. This is essential to reducing harmful estuary discharges and restoring natural southward flows. Addressing recent waterlogging issues in the southern part of the system, these conveyance upgrades will better protect communities and wildlife by maintaining appropriate water levels in the key areas. As you know, these first 2 components are a part of the CEPP EAA project, and echoing some of the earlier comments, I just want to request from the district that you all look at the Southland project with heightened scrutiny, given the potential for harm to these investments. Thank you, Chair Goss and other board members, for your candid response and publicly providing your feedback on the Southland project to the stakeholders today. We really appreciate that. And finally, the final aspect of the CEPP South component, the 355 West Spillway, we're really happy to see that being expedited by the district. We know it's a crucial step forward toward removing flow barriers and restoring historic sheet flow into Everglades National Park, one of Florida's most treasured natural resources. Completing this component of the Blue Shanty Flowway ahead of schedule is very encouraging, accelerating restoration benefits, and we are excited for the completion of all 6 of CEPP South components in the future. So Audubon, Florida applauds the district's leadership in advancing Everglades restoration. With many stakeholders over the years urging you to move water south, these projects are key to making that vision really a reality. So we urge the board to approve these contracts to maintain momentum in restoring this vital ecosystem for future generations. Thank you for your time and consideration of our comments.
Thank you, Ms. Newcamp. We'll hear next from Mark Perry.
Thank you, Governing Board. Mark Perry. We are also excited and supportive, obviously, of getting CEPP underway and moving forward with these components. If you look at those 19 different components, I reflect back into those kind of worded days in 2015 and 16 when then Assistant Secretary Army Jo Ellen Darcy, and we had meetings with her talking about we've got to consolidate these projects and put them together and fast track things. And it did come together as CEPP, and CEPP broke down into these components. And then we went to the PACR, the Project Area Change Report, and that post-authorization change report with the EAA reservoir component of that, put that in there. And those of us who've been involved in kind of putting these together are really excited about fast-tracking these and moving these forward. You know, we look at how they line up on the integrated delivery schedule and looking at, 2034 at possibly getting most all of these completed. So the sooner the better, and we can add them to these great works of the district and works of the projects here that are going on. I kind of reflect back that, we need this kind of sending water south. This is so important that we all talk about all the time about how we can move water south from the lake. And getting these components into CEPP is so vital. And it's also about that conveyance. When I look at, when we looked at, yes, we need storage and treatment within the system, we also need that conveyance. So the conveyance improvements to Miami and also Canal and also the North New River Canal are vitally important to get that conveyance that we need to supply that water moving south, particularly now that LOSUM's in place, because with LOSUM, instead of discharging to the northern estuaries, we're wanting to put all that water south from the lake too. So we're going to need that conveyance to improve that. And I kind of reflect back when in actually 1906 and to 1912 is when Hamilton Diston was actually out there digging that first North New River Canal. So that kind of history is some things that we like to look back and say, wow, that started a long time ago when we started understanding and trying to build in that conveyance. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. Mr. Chairman, we have no hands raised on Zoom.
Thanks. We'll go to board discussion if there's any questions or comments for Mr. Arnett. Okay, now.
Quick question.
Yes,
Sorry.
Mr. Steinle, go ahead.
Lucinate, just in the interest of the whole discussion today, when we're dredging or a provider, contractor's dredging, what do we typically do with the fill? And is there sometimes where we can reuse it for projects?
Definitely. If a project is if the material is right for a certain project, we look at that. We want to be able to use that material in other locations. Sometimes proximity is the issue. You're not going to truck 30 miles or, so trucking is expensive. So you want your fill as close as possible to your project. But yes, we do look at that.
I mean, is it often or infrequent? I'm just trying to get a sense.
Specifically for CEPP South, we've had a lot of discussions on, each project, one degrades a levee, one creates a levee, where we're going to get the fill, and all, or we have excess fill and we're storing it on the L31 North levee. We want to make sure that we're doing that quantity and analysis to see where we can move that fill back to to support each different contract. So that scheduling is important, and timing of the contracts and when that fill will be available. So we do look at that.
Okay. In our briefing, I just thought I would mention something interesting, which is the C component of this, which we are voting on for about 50 million. The Corps' estimate was 80 million on this. So significant difference. Maybe that can go in the governor's case study. And then just for, I'm sure the board recognizes this, but one thing that we need to be conscious of is the material impact on materials cost related to tariffs, which we also talked a little bit on the briefing. So, you know, steel in particular, concrete. This is increasing the current situation, which seems to change frequently, but regardless, will have an upward effect on the cost of our projects that we just need to keep in mind. Thanks.
Sure. Mr. Bergeron.
Seeing all these great improvements that are going on north of the Tamiami Trail, the progress we're making, the ability to move more water south, that ties right back into the Blue Shanty and getting the water beyond the Tamiami Trail. To get the benefit of all of moving water south, the bottom end of the system has to be accelerated to get these benefits and as we go forward. And I notice there's a lot of degrading in the Blue Shanty, and I assume all that material is going to be used to build the levee
Yes.
in the Blue Shanty.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Bergeron. Okay, so we have 3 resolutions before us, which is going to mean 3 votes. So everybody pay attention, and we'll make this go quickly, I hope. I'm going to need a motion before we go anywhere.
I'll make a motion for resolution number 2025-0608.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second for 2025-0608. Is there further discussion? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to call that question. I'll start with Mr. Hurley.
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Colonel Roman?
Yes.
I'm going to vote yes. Mr. Steinle?
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron?
Yes.
Mr. Spotswood?
Yes.
Vice Chair Wagner? All right, that passes unanimously. Can I have a motion on the second resolution?
Make a motion to pass resolution number 2025
I'll
of
second.
609.
I have a motion and a second on 2025-0609. Further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call that question. Mr. Hurley?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Colonel Roman?
Yes.
I'm going to vote yes. Mr. Steinle?
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron?
Yes.
Mr. Spotswood?
Yes.
Vice Chair Wagner? That passes unanimously.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. It passes really unanimously now. Super unanimous. Okay, resolution 2025-0610. Is there a motion on that?
I make a motion to approve resolution 2025-0610.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Hurley?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Colonel Roman?
Yes.
I'm going to vote yes. Mr. Steinle?
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron?
Yes.
Mr. Spotswood?
Yes.
Vice Chair Wagner?
Yes.
Thanks. That passes unanimously. And that concludes consent.
Discussion.
I'm sorry, discussion.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lucine. Technical reports, Mr. Mitnick and Ms. Armstrong.
All right. So starting where we always do, just looking back at some of the rain, you can see from November through April, that was the dry season, all the deficits compared to the average rainfall that occurred during that. I mean, that's no news to any of you. You've been hearing that for several months now. But then May, you get into sort of that transition month. So you can see there's actually a surplus of rainfall over the month of May district-wide. Then we jump into June, you can see the rains have already started. So I think Mr. Butler touched on this, or maybe it was Mr. Gosh talking about how much it's raining over in his neck of the woods. So the wet season has started. The district meteorologist made that declaration to the ability that they can. As of May 22nd was the beginning of the wet season for us. So we're definitely into the wet season. You heard Mr. Butler talk about what that means for Lake Okeechobee operations, how it shifts over to normal operations, and we can touch on that a little bit later on in the slide deck. So welcome to the wet season. So with that, you'll see the graphic there on the right-hand side, which is just starting from that May 22nd time until now. So was that a week and a half or so, maybe 2 weeks? And so it's just been the recent rains, which has been plentiful over portions of the district. As we move forward, obviously you'll see these colors continue to change. But for right now, at least, compared to what you would expect for the months of a little bit of the end of May and the beginning of June, we're about 175% above what we would typically get. Granted, it's only been a week and a half, so that's just, you know, fun with math. I wouldn't put too much credence in that excess number of over an inch and 7/10. So just real quick on the dry season, you can see it was pretty dry. It was pretty much following. So all these different shaded out gray lines are the past dry seasons throughout the period of record, and then the colored bars, or actually zones, are the different percentiles here. So you can see for the most part, we had pretty much tracked all dry season, very dry down towards the bottom. And by the end of it, we were down in the first, if not the 5th percentile overall within the period of record. But then there was that bump up towards the end of May. So we exited the dry season right about there, sitting in the 10th percentile overall within the period of record. So just to give you another flavor of how dry it really was this past dry season. As we shift to the upper chain of lakes, you can see the blue bars at the top of all these graphics. That's the rainfall that started occurring. So as you would expect, looking here at East Lake, there is a rise in the lake stage as a result of that rainfall. So there were operations that were implemented to reduce that lake stage and bring it back down, because we're trying to get it down to the summer pool there on June 1st, but we sort of cut the corner and came right across and managed those discharges a little bit, and didn't just all move it down into West Lake, which also saw that little bit of the rise right there, and you can see just slightly cut that corner at the bottom of the regulation schedule as well. So right about now, East Lake is moving about 300 CFS down into West Lake, and West Lake is moving about 600 CFS down towards the Kissimmee, Cypress, Hatchinall group. So that's why you see that rise in Lake Kissimmee. In addition to those inflows, that rainfall that fell directly over the 3-lake system, Kissimmee, Cypress, and Hatchinall. So it's moved up into the higher elevations, or the higher zones, within the increment 1 of the headwater schedule. So as a result of that, the district increased flows down the Kissimmee River. Right now we're doing just over 500 CFS, if I remember it correctly. And that will have an impact on how the river looks. So, Cassandra.
Good morning. So, as mentioned, the rain has started to pick up, and you'll see in the map on the right that there is actually an increase in water on the floodplain in very localized spots. But for the most part, we are still very dry. And this is not unusual for this time of year. If you see 1 year ago, we were pretty much at the exact same place, both in flow and in the lack of water on the floodplain. And so we're about a 7-day average of 320 CFS, which is well within the banks of the Kissimmee River, and so there's no overflow into the floodplain. However, there's been a little bit of an increase in the amount of flow coming in, so that will hopefully help with navigation for outboard motors. There has been difficulty for some boats to be traveling down the river. So hopefully now that there's more flow, they'll be able to travel a little bit better. The other thing that is happening in the river is the dissolved oxygen concentrations are remaining well within the good range. We are above the 2 milligrams per liter threshold where aquatic animals get stressed. So the conditions are good for our fish.
So then looking at how water's moved around the upper part of the system, there's not a whole lot to talk about here on this graphic because it is just since the beginning of May there. But you can see there's been some increases in those flows coming into Lake Okeechobee here. With the lower lake levels as it continued to decline and the release decisions, there really hasn't been any water that's come out of the C44 basin to the St. Lucie estuary, nor has there been any Lake Okeechobee water discharged to the St. Lucie estuary just for the beginning of this water year. Right now, the operations plan for the C44 basin actually is that water comes back towards Lake Okeechobee, and that's why you see this 26,000 acre feet here. It's water coming out of the C44, moving into Lake Okeechobee itself. But for the other basins contributing to the estuary, very small flows because of the lack of rainfall from C23-24, and then very small flows coming out of C25 going into the Indian River Lagoon around the Fort Pierce area. Over on the west coast, that basin runoff number is starting to pick up, as Mr. Goss commented on earlier. So that number is picking up, and we still have some lake water that had been delivered. That was the 500 CFS that was moving down the Caloosahatchee, going towards the estuary, having originated back in the lake itself. So looking at Lake Okeechobee, this is the projection. So this board meeting is in the first Thursday of the month, where we typically have it the second Thursday of the month. So this graphic you can see sort of starts off before June because we had to start running the model to develop the data to be able to present it today. So that's why you don't see the usual cluster right there on June 1st. But as Mr. Butler commented on, typically I tend to focus on that 50th percentile line there, that the projection at least informed by the climate forecast up here going through the wet season and then getting back into the dry season, sort of bumping along the water shortage management band. Today the lake is sitting at 11.14 feet. It's up roughly 1/4 foot from its low, back down at 10.9 a couple of weeks ago. So we're getting those wet season rains, not only the inflows from the basin, but also directly over top of Lake Okeechobee. So the lake is pretty much plateaued for a little bit, and we'll hopefully start to see that rise. You already heard some comments about that rise and how to its potential impact on SAV, and Cassandra will give an update on the SAV conditions here shortly. But right now, as far as the goal of recovery was to get down below that 12 feet, or 11.5. This is how we're doing so far. We've been down below 11.5 for 40 days, trying to get that to the at least 60-day criteria. Or if not that, then for 12 feet, we've been below 51 days, hoping to keep it below for 90 days. So right now, there is no reason to think that either one of those metrics will not be achieved. So that's a good news story for the lake itself, that recovery operations were able to get it down below the criteria, and hopefully Mother Nature will start responding and SAV will start re-engaging on the bottom of the lake.
So my numbers here are slightly different than John's because I'm 2 days shy of what his were, but they essentially are showing the same thing. We had modest flows going into the lake at 25.5 thousand acre feet, and then coming off the lake was about 103,000 acre feet for a net out of 77,000 acre feet, with evaporation and rainfall equaling each other. This resulted in a 0.3 foot reduction in the lake stage, which has been good for our SAV, which I will show you in just a bit. What we are seeing is that the inflows have picked up starting in mid-May, and that's a good thing. And we have also started to scale back our outflows as we're trying to keep the lake at around the 11-foot stage. And as you can see, we are bumping along the bottom a little bit of the recovery envelope, trying to keep it at 11. We're doing well at meeting our targets of the 60 and 90 days. And the reason for those targets is to give the SAV time to grow. So even though it may germinate, you may see some sprigs, it still needs time to create biomass in order to get tall enough to be able to handle the deeper waters that will be coming later in the season. And that is the critical component for why we are doing these time lags of 60 and 90 days, is to allow time for that vegetation to grow. And here are some pictures of some SAV that has shown itself in the lake from both March and in April. Mr. Martin mentioned that he hadn't seen any. We are seeing some, and primarily this is in areas that had already had SAV growing previously. So it's recovering in areas that it already was in. And because of that regional response, one of the things that the district is doing, and this was a question earlier about are there projects, the district and the FWC are contemplating a SAV planting to put SAV into the areas where we are not currently seeing the recovery that we had hoped. And again, plants need time to grow, so what we are worried about now is the timing of that planting. Will it be enough time to allow the vegetation to grow successfully so that it can deal with the deeper waters that are coming later? But we do have projects that we are considering on the lake as part of the recovery. Moving on to the wading birds that are on the lake. We have had an amazing year, as you can see with the survey data that was from earlier in the dry season. Unfortunately, our last survey actually has us below the interquartile range for this time of year. And the thought for why this might have occurred is that the marsh has dried out, and so the foraging area has diminished. The April recession rate in the marsh was over a foot, and that dried out a lot of the foraging areas. So the birds, as you can see, have moved to the nearshore line where there is prey availability left. However, because of the type of area that it is, the prey concentration has not occurred, so there's less prey availability for those birds. The other thing that has happened is that there was some nest failure for the white ibis in Moonshine Bay, about a 30% loss because of that rapid drying in April. So that's why we think we're seeing the lower level of birds for the latest survey. And moving into algal bloom discussions on the lake, in May 29, we saw a pretty significant bloom concentration potential on the lake for the first time primarily. We have been in the temperature range that is conducive to algal blooms. We do have low DIN concentrations throughout the lake, so that's keeping any bloom potential to a minimum. However, this satellite imagery is before all of our rain events, so it is very likely that the rain and the winds that we've had from the recent storms have dissipated this bloom, and we do not expect any major blooms in the coming weeks. And we did do some testing of the samples throughout the lake. We're now in our bloom season sampling, so every 2 weeks we will be sampling for algal species as well as toxicants. And we found no toxins in any of the areas that we tested. The concentrations, about half of the samples were between 20 and 40 micrograms per liter. No samples were in the bloom concentration. There were about half of the samples were dominated by the microcystin, and then the rest were mixed or other types of algae. Moving on to the St. Lucie. We saw the lake releases to the St. Lucie were stopped back in March. And since then, the water coming to the St. Lucie has been from the basins, and it's been quite low. So you can see both at the bottom left and right that the salinities throughout the estuary have increased a bit, but the salinities remain within the good range for adult oysters at the US 1 bridge. And good news, I know that the Army Corps has been wondering, as well as the board, how are the oysters doing? Are we in spawning season? And we finally have a little pop. So yay, oysters are now in their spawning season, and we have had good salinities for their success. So we're looking to see those numbers to continue as we move through the wet season. Moving on to the West Coast, to the Caloosahatchee, similar in that the lake releases to the Caloosahatchee started to decline in March, and you can see in the upper graph that basin flow started to dominate towards the end of May. This caused the salinity throughout the estuary to increase, and you can see on the right graph that it has increased in all the locations that we are concerned for oysters. However, Cape Coral has remained within the good range for oysters. And we see oysters, so that's good. We've got a nice little pop in both the Iona Cove and Bird Island areas. And compared to last year, it may look a little low, but if you look back to the previous year, you'll see that our oyster spawning is right in line with what would be expected.
So looking at water moving around the southern portion of the system, again, very early on in the water year, especially with the dry weather, there's not a whole lot to talk about here. But what I will point out is down here towards the bottom, if you recall from the rainfall graphic earlier in the presentation, there's about 5 inches of rain that fell down here in Miami-Dade County just in the last week or so, and that's why you see this number here, 6,000 acre feet. That's the 3 pump stations along the C-111 South Dade conveyance system that had got some heavy use over the last week and a half or so. And as a result, we did have a failure at one of the end walls of the pipes at the end of the pump station off towards the west near the detention area. Fortunately, we already had some of the field station crews working on the sister station B just to the north, so they were able to mobilize and get down to 332C in short order and take care of that issue and repair and remove some of those pipes. You'll recall several months back we had talked about those pump stations and the need to remove those pipes because they had failed previously. So that's what the crew was down there doing at the B structure because we were being a little bit more proactive in removing those discharge pipes and just creating an open channel flow from the pump station off over into the detention cells. But with that more recent failure at C, they were able to just jump on it, and hopefully we're going to have that station back in service, if not today, then tomorrow, but definitely ready for the weekend. A lot of that rain also fell over here on the lower East Coast, so you can see those flows going to the Intercoastal Waterway at just under 100,000 acre feet. You'll notice we had been delivering that water supply number with the dry conditions out into service areas 1 and 2, and very small flows in other portions of the system. So as you can expect, looking at the STAs, they haven't gotten a whole lot of inflows. We're over here in water year 26, so as the wet season progresses, those numbers will start to creep up. We have been moving some water to the STAs, not only just to maintain the vegetation before it started raining, because as they were drying down, but also we have some construction activities, and you'll see this in the subsequent slides, some construction activities in the STAs. In order to float one of the barges that were in one of the cells, we had to move some water into the cell to keep it above water. With that.
All right, so for the STAs, just to recap what we saw for water year 2025, we had 1.2 million acre feet of water that flowed through the STAs, and of that, 348,000 acre feet came from the lake, with most of that coming in the dry season. Lake releases to the STAs are primarily a dry season phenomenon, and during the wet season, it's primarily from basin flow. And the graph on the right is to show you what a typical flow into the STAs over the course of the year looks like. 0 on this graph is January 1, to give you a sense of where we are. So you can see dry season flows are primarily here, and as the wet season picks up, we get to here. Then again, there's this little drop that occurs mid-July. And then the last bump primarily comes from our tropical storms and our hurricanes before we move into the dry season. So this is the basic hydrograph that you can expect as we move through the wet season. And for what we've had over the past week, we had for March, we had 36,000 acre feet moving into the STAs. And this past week, we had close to 4,000 acre feet moving in. Most of that came into STA 1 West, and the water depths within the STAs are pretty much at or above target stage. We've got a lot of vegetation management that are going on in the STAs to get them ready for the wet season, and a lot of the vegetation are fairly stressed. I did want to point out that for STA 5-6, those water depths are for Flowway 1, where we have been sending lake water over the dry season. They do not reflect the majority of the cells in that STA. So in the eastern flow path, we have 0 capacity for lake releases into either STA 1 East or 1 West. However, for STA 1 East, eastern flow path, we do have availability for local basin runoff. The central flowway is offline for leveling and will be offline for the remainder of the wet season. And the western flowway has got some post-construction vegetation grow-in and FAB treatments going on. So there's minimal capability to take in flow there. STA 1 West has a lot of stress vegetation and high phosphorus loading rates. So we're trying to minimize further impact to those. We also have migratory nesting birds in a few of the cells that are impacting our operations. For the central flow path, we have 200 CFS lake release capacity, with 100 CFS going each into STA 2 Flowway 1 and 2 Flowway 4. There are some construction activities that are occurring in STA 2, and we also have high phosphorus loading rates and vegetation stress. And same for STA 3-4. There's a lot of phosphorus loading rate that will inhibit their productivity or their capability to take up more phosphorus, and there's high stressed vegetation. So we're trying to back off on what we're sending through there. And then for 5-6, Flowway 1 has been receiving lake releases up to this point, but now that we've moved into the dry season, we have stopped our temporary pumping of lake release water to Flowway 1. And you can see it is still hydrated and will be prepared to take any basin runoff in the future. The other cells are fairly dry. They have high PLRs and they have stressed vegetation, and they will be ready to receive basin runoff when it comes.
All right, so looking at the water conservation areas, up in the upper right-hand corner, you can see Area 1 just kind of hugged its regulation schedule all the way down throughout the dry season. Then the little bump up there for these rains, but it's just slightly below regulation schedule for this time of year, and it's sitting in a pretty decent place. Area 2 has come back up, thankfully, for these rains that you see right here. We had talked before how it got down below its floor elevations, and there was a period of, I think it was a week, maybe 2, that we had stopped making water supply deliveries to Service Area 2, which is essentially Broward County, and allowing those canal systems to managed themselves based on just the direct rainfall from some of those scattered storms that came across. But with that recent rainfall, Area 2 has come back up. It's now back above its floor, so it's looking pretty good for this time of year as well. Area 3 continues just to sort of bump right along. You can see it got some direct rainfall just recently, which is helping it to maintain its water elevations. It's also back above its floor right now. As I talked about before, unlike Area 2, Area 3, we do not terminate those flows. We still continue to deliver the Tamiami Trail flow formula out of Area 3 and into Everglades National Park. So with the declining stages in Area 3, of course, the volume of that release has continued to decline. But as we see the stages starting to come back up, then that number will also go up because it's rainfall driven and rainfall dependent. But other than that, the system in the southern end is pretty stable right now, as I said a couple different times. It's just the onset of the wet season, so we'll see what the rest of what Mother Nature tends to bring us.
So with the recent rainfalls, we've actually seen water levels come back up. You can see on the right-hand side, some of the places that used to be red are now yellow, and some of the places that used to be yellow are now green. So that's great news. And so starting at the top of the section over here in 2A, we're getting some water in there that'll be supportive for vegetation health. Moving down to 3A, there is increasing depth, and this is going to be really important for our wading birds that remain in that area. The Big Cypress Basin is still fairly dry, but you can see along the edges that it's starting to rehydrate again. And then at the very bottom, you can see that there is a return of connectivity, especially for Shark River Slough, where the water is now able to get to the bay. However, Lossman still does not have connectivity. And speaking of the wading birds in 3A, we have had a slight ascension in that area, but we are well below the blue box, which is where the optimum recession line would be for stork nesting in this area. We have also unfortunately seen about 80% of the nests have been abandoned and failed. However, the good news is that the 20% that do remain are likely to survive, given that the water and the rain has returned to the area, and this will be supportive for those birds as they mature. It also will be very important to keep this area hydrated as best as possible to develop the prey base that will be needed for next year's nesting season and foraging. And lastly, moving down to Florida Bay, we have seen the return of water to the system for the Taylor Slough Bridge. The water is right at, and this was a few days ago, so it's not reflecting recent rains, but it's right at this water surface, so we are expecting that the connectivity will increase. Salinities in Florida Bay proper are at the hypersalinity zone. In the central and western regions of the bay are below the hypersalinity zone in the eastern part of the bay, but all of them are within the interquartile range for the bay. And we are not expecting to see any seagrass die off with the hypersalinity event. If you remember back in 2015, we had a pretty dramatic die off. We are not set up in the system for that type of an event to occur this time, thankfully.
All right, for groundwater, you heard Mr. Bartlett touch on it in his executive director's report, but over there in Cape Coral, the actions that have been taken both between us and the local entities have seen a response in that aquifer. So we'll look to hopefully see that trend continue in a positive direction. But over on the East Coast, all these different colors, they'll start getting over here into these greens and blues as the wet season progresses. So there's not really too much concerns for groundwater along the lower East Coast. As far as the Climate Prediction Center and the outlook, as we progress into the wet season, they're still calling for a slightly above average rainfall over the course of this wet season, and then as you get towards the end, out in October through December, it switches back to equals chances. That signifies the transition into the dry season, so we'll see how that evolves. But later on, and you get into the heart of the dry season, they're still calling for a below average rainfall out there in the heart of the dry season. Not going to really talk about this when you can see this graphic's outdated there. In May 27th, the recent rains have dramatically changed this picture, so just moving right along. And talk about what the near-term forecast looks like. Right now, what we anticipate is for the next week, we'll probably have a little bit below normal rainfall, but as we get out there into week 2, we'll also be below normal rainfall. So there's some rains that are moving through the district, but by the time we get out into next week, we may have another little spat here, but you can see the 7-day, excuse me, the 7-day averages district-wide. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you both. Are there any questions or comments? Mr. Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Earlier in my board comment, I talked about John earning every bit of his pay. But Cassandra, I failed to recognize you're part of that. And so with that, SAV growth, is that linear or is that exponential?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
So when they are sprouts, then it is exponential. When you've got your first little sprigs growing, it's very similar to any kind of grass that you're growing, where it grows very quickly initially and then slows down as it's growing taller. So yes.
Okay, so it's backwards of what I would think. Okay, so the sprouts really come on quick, and then we're talking a slow growth from there.
Exactly, yes.
Okay, when I think about grass in my hayfield, it takes a while to get that first 6 inches, but then all of a sudden it seems like exponential growth when it comes to the next 2 foot. So the SAV growth would be opposite. So we really do need that slow ascension.
Yes, sir, we do. It's going to be a critical component of their success as we get trying to thread the needle between the water shortage band and not having too rapid of an ascension to give that grass enough time to grow.
Okay. Threading the needle, that's right. Well said, Chair. All right, the other question, John. Wouldn't be fun if I didn't put you on the spot here. We start June 1st. Storage capacity around Lake O. Where are we at with all our structures and storage capacity? Come on, I didn't miss it. I did not miss it.
All right, so C44 reservoir.
Okay.
We had with the drier weather, we had some maintenance items that we needed to take care of, so we had drawn it down. So last I heard, I think it was in the 3 to 4 foot depth range, but I need to double check that. But there is still available capacity there to accept basin inflows as the C44 basin starts getting direct rainfall. So we've got plenty of storage capacity there left in that reservoir. As you know, C43 is still under construction. We can talk more about that next month because I think you may be visiting over there next month. And then, of course, with all of the dispersed water management projects north of the lake, they're just starting to receive some of those rainfalls. Again, some of them being the passive inflows and some of them being the more active managed projects. So coming out of that dry season, there is available storage in the projects throughout the system. But more importantly, as we go through this transition from the dry into the wet, there's that soil storage. It's going to take a while for that soil matrix to start filling up before you start getting excessive amounts of runoff. That means it's both good and bad. Good in the sense that you're not getting that big slug of water as soon as it starts raining. It's got to fill up and fill in those voids within the soil matrix. But it also is bad in the sense you get that first flush of those nutrients that have been applied or built up over the course of the dry season. So we try to manage both of those aspects in the sense of we've taken on we're trying some new operations in portions of the system to manage that first flush from a water quality and nutrient standpoint. And maybe in a couple weeks or months, then we can come back and talk about how well we did in achieving those goals. But the system is sitting in a decent place right now to accept those summer rains.
All right, good. You passed my trick question. You jumped right into what I was really wanting to look at. And I will note, I've driven by Brighton Valley several times this week. It's almost full. Yeah, it's got a pile of water in it. So I was just going to give you kudos, and you jumped into it. Thank you.
Mr. Steinle.
Can you guys remind us, when do we get to see the A2 STA in the materials? I know we're going through sort of the prelim process, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when I'm assuming it'll come in the materials.
Yeah, eventually we'll start reporting on it. Right now it's in that grow-in phase. And we can probably come back next month and have some information on how it's growing in, but it is not fully operational. We're still waiting for the operational approval to be able to start bringing inflows into the facility. We're only allowed to bring water in to maintain some of the water depths, that sort of a thing. We're not allowed to release any water, so there is no flow-through activity, and that's not anticipated for some time because we're still waiting for that operational approval.
When was our expectation in terms of fully operational?
So that is dependent on two things. One, the vegetation health and that grow-in and how well it's coming in. So this stormwater treatment area, when it starts flowing through, then it is subject to the Q-Bell on day one. Our other STAs, as you may recall, you've heard Mr. Bartlett talk about it. Q-Bell's going to start next year. Q-Bell's going to start next year because they've had this period of time where we went through all the construction under restoration strategies, and then after all that is done, the Q-Bell applies. Well, for the A2 STA, it applies day one as soon as we start flow through operations. So we're being very diligent about that grow-in period and making sure we have a good, healthy set of vegetation such that we can meet the Q-Bell not only the first year, but every subsequent year thereafter.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Ms. Bergeron?
So I had mentioned this earlier, but to make sure there's no confusion, because I've seen an awful lot of press in regards to the drought and how it's affecting the environment. But in my viewpoint, and I want your opinion as well, I think Lake Okeechobee has benefited from this drought. Water supply is certainly a concern. And I think the Central Everglades, Everglades National Park, the Big Cypress, our whole environment has benefited because we haven't seen the glades dry up in quite some time to cleanse itself. So that is my viewpoint, different from water supply. Getting into storage of water into the future, I think it's important that we analyze our staff. Where is the biggest benefits for storing water to be able to comply with the benefit of water supply and the benefits to obviously agriculture and benefits to that quantity of water, natural flow from Orlando all the way to Key West. That, I think we have to look at that. For instance, we have the C11 basin, which is moving forward, water storage in Broward County. And then we have, in the future, the C9 basin that borders the Broward Palm Beach line that is water storage. And I think it's important that we look farther south for water storage because of the growing population of Dade County. And that would benefit the well fields as well, their water supply. And it would benefit Biscayne Bay to supply that natural quantity of water for Biscayne Bay. So as we analyze, these reservoirs, I think it's important that we're not trying to bring storage all the way from Palm Beach County, all the way to Dade County, if we have the opportunities to build them in a location that is much more cost-effective. And anything we do out to the west, and you have the whole lake belt out there, there's all kind of lakes that exist to store water for Dade County. And seems like Biscayne Bay has always been, for a long time, it's come to the front now. We hadn't done much for that. We're doing it now, but we need the water supply as well in the right locations. So I think as we go forward with analyzing where these reservoirs need to be built, we have to make sure that they're in a area that truly benefits the water supply that's needed in South Florida. That's kind of my opinion. And furthermore, any reservoirs that are built farther south to benefit Dade County's water supply needs. And when you're storing water, it really helps Everglades National Park because water is impervious, and if it borders the park, you're actually helping to keep more water in the park as well. So that's, I know we're thinking about water supply into the future. We need to be making sure that if we have the opportunity to put it in the best location for water supply too. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bergeron. Anything further? Thank you both very much. Ms. Heater, we'll go on now to the monthly financial report.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. The monthly financial report that I'm reporting on today is through the month of April. So through the month of April, thus far we have collected $860 million in new revenue. And we've expended $645 million. Comparing April of last year to April of this year, we've collected $203 million more this year in intergovernmental, basically, which is dominantly the state sources. And we've expended about $107 million more project-driven. During the month of April, we collected $40 million, so just from March to April, it was a $40 million collection of revenue. And then we spent $104 million. And that's a lapse in, timing of posting, reimbursements, et cetera. So of that $104 million, which is, of interest and a theme, same theme, 88% of that $104 million was expended on restoration and O&M. So about $92 million of that 104 supports restoration and O&M. 6% for science and monitoring, 4% on management and administration, and then 2% on regulation. The $860 million in revenue that we've collected thus far, $462 million of that is from state appropriations, so revenue reimbursements from state appropriations. On average, we're spending anywhere from $40 to $65 million a month on Everglades restoration through reimbursements. We've collected $359 million of our ad valorem. The monthly financial report shows that we're about 0.1% behind trend, which is just a timing of posting revenues coming in. The remaining $39 million that makes up that $860 million is from investments, earnings, license permit fees, leases, sale of district property, and self-insurance. We've expended about and obligated 61.4% of the budget thus far. So that concludes my summary of the report.
Thanks, Ms. Heater. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Ms. Heater? Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to our last general public comment period for this meeting. Is there any general public comment?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. We'll begin with Newton Cook, followed by Captain Chris Whitman.
This walking's getting awful hard after they cut on you a bit. A short time this morning, I just wanted to say, Drew, thank you for going out or being a part of the WCA2 boat ramp problem. It's been an ongoing problem, and I'm not going to bore everybody here with it, but I hope you can do something to help the airboat people. EAA1, EAA2 reservoir, massive reservoirs. 20 years ago, they were planned, sitting right next to each other. EAA1 became FEV1 because of many reasons. I have no really dog in this hunt, other than we hopefully get some SDA hunting. Why is there a complaint? Because we're going to have an in-ground reservoir which will not affect the water tables, and it basically, the volume is going to replace a good bit, if not all, the reservoir that we lost, the A1 reservoir that we lost, which was right next door. I am just, don't see why we do not take advantage of somebody else digging a hole and filling it with water instead of building what we originally planned 20 years ago, 2 above-ground reservoirs that had basically the same amount of water. And this one is just going to have one in the ground. Why are we going to spend $2 billion or just not have a reservoir? It doesn't make any sense. Why are people opposing this? I can tell you, but I'll leave it to your own judgment. Who benefits from this? We benefit, the taxpayers benefit, but oh my God, it's on sugar land and they might make a buck. Now I'm going to be honest. That's plain BS. Why do we let personal feelings and feuds get involved in a project that's going to save $1 billion, maybe $2 billion? It's not rational, and I hope this board will look at that. I looked at the SCAs, and we'll be out looking at them again in about a month or so. It's not anyone's fault here. But when we put the lake water in those SCAs 7 or 8 years ago, they've never come back, and we've got to get Q-Bell done by next year. So I sympathize with you, and we'll accept whatever happens. And I'm speaking for the duck hunters. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. We'll hear next from Captain Chris Whitman, followed by Mark Perry.
Good afternoon. I want to first thank the board for their comments and concerns about the Southland proposal. As you can tell, millions of people across the state are concerned with the impact this could have, and so we do appreciate your comments and insight and really attention to where this is going. To answer a few of Mr. Steinley's questions in his comments, you know, the question of would this change our position or stakeholders' positions if there was some different things that came out of it. And I can't speak for other organizations, but I can speak for us, and I can tell you that, you know, for the question of if maybe there was some kind of a profit share coming from this aggregate to the taxpayer benefit, whether it's for Everglades restoration or directly back to other benefits to the taxpayer, that would not interest us. We're not interested in a share of the profits from a rock mine in the Everglades. I can also tell you that, you know, to the question of if this project posed some sort of other benefit, would you? I can absolutely tell you that if this proposal was 8,600 acres of STA, I would 100% wholeheartedly support that, for a couple of reasons. The limiting capacity right now for Everglades restoration, sending water south, is not just storage. It's the ability to clean that water, to move it into the system. We need more filter marshes. An STA, as you all have proven with the EAA reservoir STA, can be constructed much more quickly than a 35-year proposed rock mine. So if the proposal was that we build 8,600 acres of STA on this land, I would be cheering it on, and I'd be cheering the sugar industry on for really coming to the table to help advance what's needed in Everglades restoration. However, that's not what is being currently proposed. Lastly, I would just kind of leave with a couple of my own questions. You know, Mr. Bartlett referenced those letters, those two letters, and I've got them here, and I won't read the whole letters, but the critical language in those letters, the one says that the project on this identified site will provide valuable alternative technologies for water management and treatment, complementary to the EAA reservoir complex and others. We look forward to working with you to make this a reality. The other letter says the district believes that at this time, on the identified site, connected to District Canal with the right configuration, this project will likely provide viable alternative technologies for both water management and water treatment to ecosystems. I don't know how you can assume that this would provide water treatment component or value when the proposal does not incorporate a wetland. And it's hard to tell which one of these letters come from Mr. Bartlett, because they are both addressed to Matt from Mr. Bartlett.
Thank you, Captain Whitman. We'll hear next from Mark Perry, followed by Lisa Interlandi on Zoom.
Again, Governing Board, thank you, Mark Perry. We appreciate the opportunity to just some comments. I appreciate staff's presentation every month about the STAs and moving that water south and those graphs that we present there. You know, when we look at last water year and looking at how much we've put from the basin runoff, over 1 million acre feet goes through the STAs, and then only about 100 or 200,000 from the lake releases go south. The STAs, as they show the performance here over that past year, the 5 STAs have an inflow concentrations of about 168 parts per billion on average. The outflows at 31 parts per billion on an average. So we're not down to the Q-bell, which is going to require the maximum annual flow weighted mean at 19 parts per billion, and a maximum long-term flow weighted mean 3 out of 5 years to 13 parts per billion. So we've got a ways to go to get our STAs making sure they're going to treat that water, and particularly how it's going to be working with the new components coming on, the EA reservoir or other components, and getting more and more STA treatment in that EA system is going to be to our advantage, obviously, to meet the Q-bell going forward. Restoration strategies are getting completed. Those things are getting done. But, you know, we're wanting to send more water south, as we said, from Losum, because we're not going to the estuaries. We're going to need to be sending more of that water south under Losum management. And, for instance, you know, all that water east and west is not just the water, it's also the amount of nutrients. Like, for instance, at the St. Lucie, we had about 200,000 acre feet, 220,000 acre feet on an annual basis from lake discharges, which carry with it about 46 metric tons of phosphorus and about 416 metric tons of nitrogen. So those concentrations and those amounts of nutrients are also going to go south, hopefully with those, rather than releasing them east and west to these estuaries. So we've got to have that more treatment capacity as much as we can when we restore the river of grass aspects and move that water south. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. We'll hear next from Lisa Interlandi. Ms. Interlandi, please unmute your mic.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
We hear you.
Okay, great. Lisa Interlandi with the Everglades Law Center. I want to thank you guys for your comments on Southland. You know, the future analysis that you guys are going to do, it does seem very valuable, but honestly, I've said it before, but you guys are really missing some fundamental realities about what has already occurred with regard to this project. I just wanted to quickly respond to the suggestion that this is a sugar-related issue. I have two words, C51 reservoir. Literally no one is opposing C51 reservoir that is also owned by the sugar industry. It has gotten almost $300 million of taxpayer funding. No one's opposing it. Why? Because it's not right adjacent to the EAA reservoir. But with regard to Southland, Palm Beach County has already approved this project. In order to do so, they required the district to identify the site as a viable water resource project. Drew sent the letter on New Year's Eve, and for whatever reason, that letter mirrored the language of the county's comprehensive plan. I don't know why you would have ever done that, but even though the letter was conditioned in many different ways and didn't actually identify the site or project as viable, the applicant insisted and the county agreed that this constituted the district's identification, and that box is checked off. You guys have identified it. Your no approval by the district is required from this point forward. There's absolutely nothing in the county's approval that requires the district to approve this project now or at any point in the future. Following these comments, I will send you guys these conditions and some related documents so that you can review them with yourself. I already shared them with your general counsel earlier today. The other thing, FTEP issued its notice of intent to issue last week. I did not see anything in that permit that requires the district's approval. After 21 days, in approximately 2 weeks from today, that permit for the Southland mine will become final. So at this point, the mine is basically 9/10 of the way approved. There's been so much discussion from you guys about whether this project should move forward, how it should move forward. This mine is moving forward. It has already been approved. Your chance to weigh in on whether there is going to be a mine next to the EA reservoir is basically over, except for all you have left right now is your ability to communicate with the governor over the next 2 weeks. That is it. Whether and how the mined pits ultimately at some point in the future become a water resource project and for whose benefit, that is something that is yet to be determined. But there is nothing in the approvals that have been granted, at least the Palm Beach County approval, that require that any eventual water resource project be managed or approved by the district. In fact, the county approval expressly allows other governmental entities and even nonprofit organizations to serve this function. You guys absolutely do have a fiduciary duty. However, your ability to exercise it is being rapidly foreclosed. We are urging you to engage today. Please critically review the approvals that have already been granted and
Please wrap
weigh
up your
in
comments.
with the governor's office. Please weigh in over the next 2 weeks because you guys are getting pushed out of the district decision-making process. And if you don't assert the role now, these decisions are being made permanently without you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Interlandi. Mr. Chairman, we have no additional public comment.
Right, thank you. Thank you all very much for your comments. We'll go now to board comment, and I'll start with Mr. Hurley.
I think that last call really, or comment really reinforces the idea, the importance of the analysis that's going to take place on the Southland project. And I really think as soon as we can start getting a feed of information, that'll be very appreciated and very helpful.
Thanks, Mr. Hurley. Mr. Butler?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I had not reviewed the NEAT flyer for this month that Colonel Roman referenced in her comments, and I looked at it. There's a lot of good stuff in there, yeah. Yeah. But one of the things, if you see in that top right blue bubble there, see Jake in the back, Florida Farm Bureau has worked to kind of start up a Lake Okeechobee partnership. I've been kind of involved in it through this process. And a lot of different stakeholders, bringing diverse stakeholders to the table, and keep an eye on it. I think that will be a good group to kind of watch and learn from.
Carl Roy?
Nothing further, thank you.
Mr. Steinley?
Nothing further.
Mr. Bergeron?
You're not going to believe this, but nothing further.
Long live the Everglades, Ron.
Yeah.
Mr. Spotswood?
Nothing for me, Chairman. Thank you.
Vice Chair?
Good meeting, Chauncey. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Quickly, I guess I've got one following up on that last comment, or a question for Mr. Bartlett. So what does an intent to issue mean from DEP, and what would they be issuing a permit for, since we don't know what the project's going to look like?
So the intent to issue, it has a draft permit attached to it. So this is for the mining and reclamation, is my understanding of that permit. So it's an environmental resource permit for those activities.
Okay, but I thought Drew said we weren't going to get a final proposal from them until August.
They submitted an application to DEP. and
For
that's-
what? I mean, I guess my mind doesn't work that way. If you're going to do linear permitting, don't they have to be for the same project?
Yeah, again, this is for the surface water management again, I haven't reviewed the permit
Would you-
thoroughly, right?
And would you do that and get back to us?
Sure.
And let us know, because it seems to me that if DEP is going to issue a permit for something that we never agreed to, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And again, I don't know where DEP is in this project, but again, I'm just using the logic train here.
Sure. Yeah, I will get back to you.
Thanks.
Isn't it a mining permit?
Yes.
So theirs was a mining permit. It wasn't a permit for a water resource project.
Right, but if there is no water resource project, is there a mine?
DEP's lens is does this pass the criteria as a mine or not, right? And so then they have clocks and timeframes to issue a permit to say, yes, you can mine under these criteria. And I think it was for just a smaller phase of the project. So
Right, for three, yeah.
Okay, but again, that goes back to the whole basis of this whole chicken and egg thing of isn't the mine contingent on this being a water resource project?
that's a county perspective, not a DEP perspective.
So DEP is, okay, you've lost me, but I'm not going to bother the public on this one. We'll talk about it offline. Thanks. We're going to be back. Oh, first of all, I want to thank Mr. Spotswood and Mr. Hurley for joining us here in Palm Beach for the first time. This is your first meeting here. You fill the seats well. Thanks very much for being here. And our next meeting is going to be back here on Thursday, July 10th, 9 o'clock. And I look forward to seeing you all then. This meeting's adjourned.